Good evening, it is 7:36, and we will do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. All right. So I'm gonna maybe just.
The camera loves me.
What?
The camera loves me.
Okay. No, let's do the announcements, go ahead.
All right, tomorrow night at Open Door, our village historian Joyce Cole will give a presentation called From Spiritual Care to Modern Medicine, How Ossining Learned to Heal Itself. And this will be a storytelling experience revealing 250 years of local healing from spiritual care to modern medicine. And that's at 7 p.m. It's free, but you should let them know you're coming. Should be really interesting.
Great, anything else? Okay, so there are a few things to take note of, I get the wrong dates and stuff, so I've got to get this right. Sunday is, the Elks, Club, which is a long-standing, club here in Ossining, is sponsoring during the Flag Day celebration. And so we highly recommend it's at 4 to 6 p.m. at the waterfront. And so, and there are lots of election things going. We don't discuss who you want to vote for, how you want to vote. Really, as people are elected, we just strongly recommend that you vote. The primaries, the early primaries start Saturday. They go on till for a week, for 8 days, and then there is the primary day. And in Ossining, for the first time in many years, just to point out for folks, instead of the Caputo Center, will be at St. Anne's School because there's just parking there that's available. That we currently are under construction in so many places, so not so much available. So it's going to be at St. Anne's. There's a lots on social media, but just for the 1 or 2 people that may have missed it, just want to remind people to please go out and vote. And it's really an important part of our democracy. And I think that we have one more announcement tonight, now that everybody's nice and quiet, is congratulations, 7th anniversary today. I don't know if it's congratulations, I don't know if I'm sorry, I'm not quite feeling it.
Very much.
It's all amazing, yeah, this manager. Yeah, well, no, time flies, am I right? When you're having fun, I think it's the way, is that how the saying goes? That's how it goes, so I'm gonna stay with that. Yes. Except, so that means you're having a great time, we, sign contracts, so you're on for quite a bit longer. We really appreciate your service, all the stuff that you're doing. I think that you're now being called Karen Construction Diatori, since apparently you're now.
Among many other things, Mayor.
Those are the good things, those are the good names, no, where everybody is, the password for the week is construction all over the village, whether it's Open Door, it's getting some roof work done, or the multimodal, the hub, whether it's the all senior housing that's on Upper Croton, Olive Opera House, things going on the waterfront, 30 Water Street, soon to be 34 State Street, lots of construction going on. It all started, you see the cranes. I was kidding, we met this morning with the chief, and one of the things I said was somebody wrote me a note and said that they really believe our city, our town bird should be the crane. I didn't get the joke at first, but now I understand the joke.
Not
So-
the owl.
Yeah, well, we're gonna move it to the crane, and I think there'll be more cranes coming up, so I like that joke. We're on, got a big schedule of events this evening.
We do, and thank you very much. I will say this, the last 7 years have been probably the most rewarding and enjoyable 7 years of my career. So thank you to everybody here for that. And we do have a lot of fun. One of the most fun things we've been doing lately is looking at ways to improve our overnight parking program, which we have been working, the manager's office with the clerk's office and the police department, and of course, our legal department, trying to figure out how we can improve a program that's been, was started in the 1960s and, has been going along for quite some time. So a lot's changed, as we know, in landscape of funding. So that, we're gonna do an overview. Next slide, please, Nikki. I want to start by saying that we're chunking this out based on really tackling things that we know are most immediate issues. I don't want to say low hanging fruit because that's not really the right term, but it's really now the issue we have where we probably have the most challenges is hardship parking, which is overnight parking. So tonight, very specifically, we're going to be discussing the current permit policy and policy recommendations. We're going to give you a sort of snapshot of our parking violations and how they're impacted overnight, and what's going on there. So we're starting to get a better sense of the things that we're going to need to focus on. However, a lot of issues, and we're trying to be more concrete about the data so that we can address them better. We have some considerations going forward in addition to those policies. We also want to talk about the fact that the reason we're doing this is because this will benefit the community. The goal of doing this and getting it right is to make sure if you get a hardship parking because you have a home and you can't park in your driveway because your home was built long before there were driveways and garages and cars, that you can park in front. That's the whole purpose of the hardship parking. That's why they call it hardship. Your hardship is you don't have off-street parking. So more people, more cars, parking stays pretty finite. So we're just going to talk about how we're going to look at this issue, make sure that people who need parking get it, and make sure that we're accommodating the needs of today as they've evolved since the 1960s. So just to restate, I'm gonna just read our hardship parking exemption law. It's not long. Any person who, being the owner or operator of a motor vehicle, has need to park within the village of Ossining between the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. at a property location where facilities for parking of his or her vehicle on the property are non-existent or inadequate, and for whom the strict enforcement of the provision of this section would constitute an extreme hardship, may apply to the village for a hardship exemption from the strict enforcement of the provision of this law. So while just parking randomly on the street overnight is not accepted, it's not permitted during those hours, again, for extreme hardship, and I think those words are kind of important, because what constitutes extreme hardship is sometimes up for debate. So right now, the way the process works is, and Madam Clerk, please correct me if I miss anything. Somebody comes in with their application, they must provide a vehicle registration and license of the applicant, who's ever making the application. We do require that a landlord must sign the application if applicable, and that no commercial vehicles are permitted. Once they hand in this information, if the information is in order, they will be issued a temporary permit, which is issued for up to 30 days while the permit application is being validated. A permanent permit is issued after 30 days, subject to the verification of application information. So that would mean that everything's in order, and historically, this meant that somebody would go out and double check that they didn't, they don't have a driveway or a garage. That proved to be somewhat of a hardship on staff. It's really hard, and you'll see we get a lot of applications a year. So some of the things in the current policy, we realize really require some improvements, some guardrails to prevent people who may not have quite an extreme hardship, or maybe process can be prone to abuses. So next slide, please. You already got it up there. So this gives a indication of how many permits that we've given each year since 2023, up until year to date 2026. So you can see it's steadily increasing. not hugely significantly, but it does look like, based on where we are year to date, that we could be exceeding 2,000 spaces, which is an estimate of the number of off-street parking spaces. We don't actually line spaces on the street, so this is an estimate based on the average number of cars for the average car size that would be parking on any given street within the curb limits and you know, so again, it's an estimate. It is certainly not exact, but around 2,000 spaces is our estimate. As I mentioned, the hardship parking application process is prone to some abuses. So as we know, we see, we might be going above 2,000 spaces now, 2,000 permits. And if that's the case, we're gonna see even more congestion than we're seeing right now. While most applicants qualify for hardship parking legitimately, there are ways the system can be abused. You know, and these weren't always intentional by the applicant, but it's just things that happen. So landlord signatures may be inaccurate. Now, maybe somebody says, I can't reach my landlord, I'm just gonna write so-and-so's landlord here. But also sometimes people don't really understand what a landlord is. So they may be subletting from somebody and they are saying, well, I'm renting from this person, so that's my landlord. The landlord, the definition of a landlord here is the person who owns the property. That is the signature we require, and there's a specific reason for that. We want to make sure that that landlord is aware of who's asking for parking and how many people may be asking for parking in a given property. Landlords also may be allowing occupancy to exceed state regulations or they may have unpermitted dwelling units. So somebody may say, you know, I have some spare rooms or a basement that can be an apartment. Again, they may or may not realize that that has to be permitted, that that's not necessarily a legal dwelling unit, and that requires either if you go into the building department, have it permitted, getting a certificate of occupancy for that space. And again, this is a bit of an education process that we try to give people when they come in to get their applications, when they give us their applications. And the other issue is vehicles may be used for commercial purposes, but that doesn't mean that they have commercial plates. Right now, we can tell a vehicle based on the tonnage of the vehicle is defines commercial vehicle and if they have commercial plates. However, our code does say that if you have visible indications of using something commercially, you might not have the commercial plates, but you may have ladders on your van, or you may have you know, some sort of logo, or there could be other indications that you're using cars commercially. Commercial, if you're using cars for a business purpose, for a commercial purpose, you can't park, you can't get an overnight hardship parking permit. The other issue that we're dealing with is right now, we really haven't been practicing, you know, best practices in terms of how we're making sure permits are granted. And that's really because it's hard based on how this has evolved over the years. So we'd like to make the means of how we give permits to people and how we sort of limit them reasonably to people who actually need them, so that, again, everybody has a place to park. We want to improve those, make those more effective, because we really don't think our system for granting permits is effective and really focuses on fighting on the extreme hardship as much as it could. So next slide, please. So our initial recommendations, and this is important, we want to put some guardrails up right now to get a better sense of who really legitimately requires a hardship permit and who maybe has some other options that for various reasons they haven't explored, or maybe didn't know that you can't really park commercial vehicles. Maybe they were very literal, I don't have a commercial plate, therefore I can park, or maybe, you know, I have a couple cars, but I'm only using one of them and I need some place to park the other one, those type of issues. And those sort of really aren't hardship conditions the way we're defining it. So these are recommendations that we can put in place, you know, immediately. We probably give a little bit of time and update people and let them know what we're doing. But we are going to require, not only does the property owner sign the application, that'll be part of our vetting process. So the application, once we receive it, will be sent to the property owner. For almost all properties would have access, contact information for the actual property owner. So that application will be sent from the clerk's office directly online for the landlord to confirm that that is indeed their signature. We also went back and forth on a lot of different scenarios, like how do you know how many cars people need? A one-bedroom unit probably has no more than two drivers, but a three-bedroom unit could have two, it could have four, it could have five. So how do we determine how many drivers are legitimate? So we not only are we going to require for registration and license, but also if somebody is asking for 4 permits and they have have 4 cars registered in their name, that's fine, but we will also be requiring a license for each registered driver in the family. So 4 adults who drive should be correspond to those 4 cars. And that way we know that somebody's needs those because those are 4 people who live in a place legitimately who need their car for transportation, and they do not have other means to get there. The other means to park on. So this is also a way to make sure that occupancy limits for properties are being abided by and complied with. An applicant or property owner needs to provide some proof of no on-street parking. No off-street parking, sorry, that's a little typo there, but no off-street parking. So if they have a survey, that would be great. If they have photos, that's good, but photos can be deceiving. So one of the things that we can do pretty easily within the 30-day time frame without a lot of extra effort is referencing property cards from the assessor's office, which will tell if the property has a driveway, has a garage, and they'll give us some indication of whether or not there's parking off street. And if there is, there may be other considerations of how that parking is being used legitimately that still requires maybe renters because the owner's using that parking, which is sort of their right to do so. But those are things we can start to get a better handle on just how many parking spaces do you really need, given that it's not just you on your block, it's everybody else too. More effectively, I think, than code enforcement, the way we've been currently doing it, checking, given all that, given the number of code enforcement officers we have and their ability to check, we thought, working with the police department, a great solution would be to have parking code enforcement. So like parking enforcement people be the ones who go out and check when there's a question. So it's not necessarily that they'll need to check everything, but when we're really not sure something seems not right, or for whatever reason, the information's not on the property card. In some cases, the property card, what we have in the building department doesn't quite match. We'd have the ability to check that too. This would be progress, not perfection. Perfection is the enemy of the good here. The idea is we want to get better than we are. Getting everything perfect every time is going to be a challenge, but this will give us the ability to more easily educate people about why we have this program, what they need to provide, what the onus is on them, because they're the ones that need to prove the hardship. And again, this is about being a good neighbor. It's about respecting the neighborhood that you're parking in. There's a lot of things here that I think could be reinforced in a positive way for people, because this really will benefit people who need hardship parking. So next slide, please. Okay, so parking permit violations. So we kind of looked at what we know, like they just went over things we know we need to tighten up, like regardless of anything we do going forward, these things need to be set in place. And we have a position, we're also in a position to do so now. The clerk's office has been, since Sue has been clerk, has taken on a lot of the parking responsibilities that they weren't really handling in the past. So train station parking permits, this is just another element of parking and centralizing how we're dealing with parking permits overall, because right now they're housed in the finance office, which probably isn't the best place for them. Not only that, the technology that we have and the staffing that we have to enforce has improved dramatically in the 7 years I've been here, most recently over the past couple of years. And we see more improvements on that front that will make this more efficient as we go along too. So, that's things we maybe couldn't do in the past or were struggling to do in the past, but we're in a much better position to make these revisions now and tighten it up, so to speak, with some guardrails. The majority of summonses are issued for overnight parking and hardship parking. 53.5% of all of the summonses are issued, of all summonses are issued between 3 AM and 6 AM. This is partly due to a time when we're enforcing, so, you know, it's not necessarily that there's this, you can use statistics in a lot of ways, but this is an area that we've been enforcing. And over the past almost 18 months, this is the data that we've seen. So you have total summonses of 37,465 summonses total. But significant number of no parking, 3 AM to no tag. So this is really important. Most of the cars that you're seeing, a lot of the cars, let's not say most, a lot of the cars that come in to get active violations, they don't have a tag at all. So there were 12,251 violations since January 2025 of that nature. And then we had 7,806 violations of no parking, 3 to 6 AM improper area. So that means you had a tag, but you couldn't find a space where you wanted to because somebody with a no parking tag may have been parking where they shouldn't have been parking. And now it's late at night. Yeah, you're tired and you just gotta get to your home. So people take the ticket. So with that data, it does indicate some things, and this is where Stuart has been helpful because he's been dealing with parking court and the police as well. While we're not, next slide, please. Well, there's some indication that residents might not know, like a lot of people think, oh, no sign, I can park here because that's how it is in the city and other places. It's the opposite in Westchester. You know, or maybe the landlord wouldn't sign off or for whatever reason, they don't want to get a hardship permit. So they take the risk. We would rather encourage people to do the right thing through positive reinforcement. But it's based on looking at just a range of things that it may be that there needs to be some deterrence in terms of the fine itself. So we are recommending an increase in the fine for no tag parking from $50 a violation to $150, and an increase in a fine for commercial vehicle parking from $100 to $250. And again, not necessarily arbitrary here, looking at other communities, trying to figure out based on the offenses, what would be a deterrent, because right now, you know, people amass a lot of tickets, they go to court, they plead them down, and that becomes a way of parking. And perhaps with a bit higher fines associated with, it might be more incentivized to get a permit and do things the right way. And again, if they're not doing things the right way for whatever reason, maybe there's other solutions to their parking needs. Maybe not, but maybe there is. Some no tag, the prohibitive fine from the no tag summonses would reduce probably the improper area or ways that we can curb the no tag. Would be helpful to improper area summonses, so we're not necessarily recommending a change in that right now, because it seemed almost doubly punitive for people who are trying to do the right thing by getting the tag in the first place. Next slide, please. And some other considerations. we would like to institute consequences for fraudulent applications. So if you get your permanent, permit, but somehow it comes across that maybe you didn't tell people that there was a garage, or maybe it turns out it was a commercial use, or whatever it is, that we would have the right to revoke your permit permanently. And or institute, we would also have a right to invoke a fine for fraudulent application. This is really more of a deterrent. We're not looking to create a revenue source. We hope we never have to do any of these things. But to really put a stake in the ground on a deterrent. So again, to ensure that people who legitimately need to park have a place to park and are doing the right things. I would say too that we don't want to create a hardship by creating very expensive fees for hardship parking. That's not what we're, hardship parking is supposed to be able to provide an option for people. However, there is an administrative cost to this, and that's usually what's used to balance. I would say we could safely increase the amount from $90 a year to $125 a year annually. And we still wouldn't probably cover the administrative costs associated with running this program, but that would be annually. So that's $125 to park overnight annually from 3 to 6 a.m. Which is still less than a daytime parking spot by almost half, and still relatively inexpensive as parking goes for overnight. We also would like to designate, and we're working on this, Maddie is working on this, because state approval is required, designated resident streets for Hunter, Water, and Secor Road, which are right adjacent to the train station. We do have an issue where people who maybe don't want to pay the money for the train station parking are now parking in spaces where residents would like to park, but they can't because people are going to the train or using them in other ways. That is something that, again, requires a petition from the state. They don't grant those frequently, but Assemblywoman Levenberg has petitioned for a few of them and is willing to help us with this and believes they would qualify. Additionally, going forward, we have better technology now. One of the issues too on enforcement is, code enforcement, parking enforcement still has to get out of the car because of the way cars are parked, and you can't read the plates if they're parked. But there is technology and captain and lieutenant, if I get this wrong, let me know, but there is an evolution of technology that actually allows to read between that space. So somebody could literally drive through. So it wouldn't quite be, it would be a lot more effective in allowing the village to cover a lot more area in a certain time frame and be more on top of those violations. So that would be something that we would, recommend investing in for probably to fully automate by 2028, because there's some things involved in that. And next slide, please. So there are real significant community benefits here. So just anecdotally, we think that both by instituting these policies and perhaps some of the deterrents, if you will, would reduce the number of permits approved by approximately 10 to 20%. It's hard to get an exact number on that, but just based on what we're seeing as, again, most people are doing things the right way. When we see something more, that doesn't feel right, it's somebody asking for maybe an excessive number of permits or the indication that there may be commercial activity, things like that. But the real goal here is to enable residents to find parking near their homes. We want to mitigate ability to circumvent hardship parking rules, which has happened, there is anecdotal support for the fact that happens probably more frequently than we would like it to, and to facilitate more effective and efficient enforcement by really partnering with the police department and creating a united front on parking that's more seamless and operates as a whole in a sense. So next steps is the next slide. So we'd like to finalize and implement these policy with any input that the board has. No resolutions are required for policy changes. If we were to change fees, that would require resolutions. And then we'll continue to review and, assess and modify 3 months and 6 months, and then tweak and make, go forward. We would be in conjunction with that creating an online application, which is in the process, an online application packet with information and FAQs that would give some detail about, what it means to have a legitimate hardship, and really go into some user-friendly detail on that, so people understood what we mean when we say commercial vehicles parking, to better explain the goals of the program, the objectives of the program, but also the rules in a way that, people will embrace them and support them. We are, even if we do all this, so we do all this and we'll probably be able to curb, fund some of the parking and get the permits in hand. That said, we have right now approximately 2,000 spaces. Even if 10 or 20% of what's currently being asked for is not really, doesn't really fall under the determination or definition of hardship, we may want to look at, we have issues where, certain streets are very congested with a lot of parking, mostly in the T-zone where you have a significant number of pre-existing non-conforming multifamily, which are, all have certificate of occupancy. There's nothing wrong with those homes. We do know that, again, anecdotally, although I think there are some statistics on this, that more adult children are living at home for a bit longer because of housing cost. That certainly can be a driver. There's a variety of things that can be driving why we have more cars. I think it's safe to say that in the 60s, we didn't necessarily have 2-car families. We had 1-car families. But, lots changed over the years. And we are taking a deeper dive into looking at the streets and doing an overlay to the degree we can with the data we have available of who's parking where, because when you get a hardship permit, it allows you to park anywhere overnight, but the reality is people only park near their homes, because I don't know many people want to park in different neighborhoods every night from 3 to 6. So, but we do have some neighborhoods that really have virtually no parking overnight, where overnight parking is allowed, and we have some areas that it's pretty congested. So the idea is, while we don't necessarily want to open up all the streets so that people can park, there's some communities where you're not allowed to park overnight at all. It would be almost impossible for us to do that, given the age of our housing stock in most areas. But by the same token, we don't necessarily want to say, well, we have a lot of people need parking, let's park wherever, because we do know that people do abuse it in ways that are not great for the residents in that neighborhood. So we are looking at the parking map, and that'll be a follow-up presentation, and we're tentatively looking to come back to the board with a recommendation on the current parking and where we may need to see, we want to make some changes to the current parking map, which has been changed somewhat over the years, but in the since like 2015 hasn't been changed at all. Then following that, we'll bring it back to our downtown parking, because we'll be pretty close to completing the parking hub, and then we'll be recommending downtown parking policies and pricing schedules for the multimodal hub. So those are ready when that is completed.
5 years worth of work, summarized in, I don't know, 40 minutes. That's pretty good.
It's been kind of, I say, I'm pretty honest with that. I also gave everybody, because it would be impossible to see on screen. We do have a welcome the clerk's office, and you can get this online, but it is an actual map of the village and where overnight parking exists. So whether it's one side of the street, alternate side, or both sides parking, so that we can kind of get a visual, which again, that's what we'll use to try to map out exactly where we think the permits are being used to the degree that we can, and create sort of a heat map on this, so we really understand fully who's parking where.
So if I can, I'm gonna turn to my left first. We're missing Bob Pritchie, who I think has a lot of knowledge on this, but he's got a connection. But I think we all, receive this material, and it really is a number of years' worth of work. Many boards, like other things, it's an overwhelming concept to deal with all of this. So just for me, context would be that, and for others listening to the record, one, we've started looking at parking with consultants, Valerie just walked out, but she was also involved, and Maddie and everybody else, for the downtown. We came up with some small solutions, we came back with some gigantic solutions, we came back with different technologies, we came back with, let's do different kind of enforcement, let's do different pricing. So that was, one of the things that we looked at. We then are, realized that actually it's in the residential areas that we have some issues. So that's when research started, okay, so did the downtown business, now let's look at others. I do want to put in context that this is mostly we're a neighborhood type of community even today, even though we're not a sleepy river town anymore. Like we were, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it's still a river town with topography challenges. Older incorporated village with narrow roads, etc., which we all understand. But while the town has more of this, the village also has lots of apartment buildings. So the new apartment buildings have parking. We're not talking about, generally speaking, that. We're not talking about the downtown business area at this point, because frankly, with the multimodal, anybody that's gonna be parking, even some of the folks on State Street and then Spring could, depending on where they are, theoretically also park. It's not a long walk, it's pretty flat. So, and in that neighborhood, they could park, so there's some solutions coming out of there. We're really talking about the multiple neighborhoods, that we have around our community, around single and multifamily housing. And then we can, like, I just wanted for context for people who sit there and go, what, you guys didn't think about this, you didn't think about this, I'm like 110% sure that the staff, the police, the fire, all the people that are in the Rometti, the clerk's office, nobody knows what you do, now they'll know what you do. One of the things that you do, is, well, you do a lot of stuff, that's the big joke, the clerk sort of does lots of stuff, this is one of them, not to mention that you just have a lot of knowledge. So the context is, this isn't 45 minutes, this is actually a number of years. And one of the things that I personally have learned is we live in a community, even if those of us believe we live in a single neighborhood, that's what matters. The reality is that when we fix one thing, it gets broken next to it because we live in a community. You fix the parking on Dale, people just move their cars somewhere else. A developer that owns a really nice apartment building decides to charge for all the parking they have and triple it, so people don't want to pay that, so now they're parking on Spring and State or wherever they park. We do not live in an island, we live in a river town, we don't have borders. As you saw by the law, people can park anywhere in the village and people will park in different places to save money, who can blame them? But the minute they do that, the people that bought a house there or live in a multifamily that thought they had X number of spaces, now they don't have it. So now what do? They get home from work, they get their car, now they're going to the next neighborhood and so on and so forth. So what's taken a while is the domino effect of decisioning, pricing scenarios to drive behavior, and a staff who sees this every day. They are by far not naive about the tricks of the trade, and I think everyone will agree that 90% or 80% are people who live here peacefully, are good characters, are just trying to live their life, go to work, feed their kids, retire, whatever. But it's this other 10-20% that is something that we do have to have some guardrails, because we haven't done it in quite a while. So I do want to put context just for the record so that we understand that this is a solution to a problem, not something people decided they want to make a few extra dollars for a revenue, because this ain't the way we make money. Just if I hear this stop nickel and diming, it's simply not true. That is not what we're doing. No intention of doing that is not how we make money through tax. We raise money through taxation to pay for everything else. I wanted to put up, because I like doing that, I like to put sort of a cover on things. Do you have questions? We'll just move deputy mayor, and then they know.
Yeah, they do. I mean, obviously,
Lots of stuff.
lots of good work on that, right? So, a couple more background questions. Do the permitting, is it rolling 12 months from when they apply?
So it is not, do you mind?
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're like the expert.
That's why I'm like asking you.
So right now it's done quarterly, but it will be rolling 12 months.
Oh.
And if I can just give you a little recap of what we've done so far and why we're at this point now, just 5 seconds. So we have been through the last 5 years, maybe 4 different applications. We always started with the train station. We now have a company that we're very happy with, and we have moved Muni parking and the train station over to that. This is the next logical move to move that over. And then as we get better and better at being able to enforce, that will help everybody and it will cut down time. So yes, right now, it's quarterly and, we want to make it rolling like we have rolling Muni parking. We don't have rolling train station parking because we are now sold out. By the way, anybody that asks, we are sold out at the train station. It may not look like it every day, but, there is enough permits out there that we cannot super oversell the permitting either. So we think that this is the next logical move to move into this parking through the same company. It will be like a 2-step process because we need more information. One of the big things that happens is we have people that use cars that are not owned by that person. So we have to take, there's a lot of considerations we have to take into, that we will look at. We look at it every single day because we listen to this we get parking permits in every day, all day long, through the finance office, which sits in our office. So yes, it will be going. So sorry, that was a long answer.
No, for me, I think that's better. Because what that does from a capacity standpoint is that evens out the visual inspection part.
Yeah.
Right, and so it'll make it a lot easier, honestly, to go do, as opposed to like this big spike, which I'm sure is part of the challenge.
Absolutely.
Right, in terms of like people going out and physically looking at the locations.
And the other thing that happens with this application, now remember, everything right now is on paper and then scanned in. So what else will happen on this is that we can look up every single person that requires one, as we do with Muni and train station, how many parking violations they have. We're on live with the parking violation system. So that will help us to curb the constant abusers of the system.
Well, and that was actually one of my questions here was like, that in terms of a couple of things in here about repeat offenders and people who continually just like make the choice. So
Right.
Is a sliding scale something that would be possibly
Explain what you mean by what's your interpretation of sliding scale?
same license plate gets 5, the 6th goes up in cost. Five
Right now,
the
if
6th
you have
goes up.
3 or more, you don't even get a permit. Unless you have a letter from the court saying that you're you're.
Good standing, yeah. And then there is additional penalties in addition to the fines too.
They don't let me 30 days.
But that's also something that we can, again, remember, this is not set in stone. This is something that will evolve. And this is something that will evolve and we can always look at where we are. But because we have, right now, what happens is these paper applications are taken in, then spreadsheets are made. So we have everybody's information for the last 5 years that has ever gotten a permit, not in a spreadsheet. So we have the landlord information, but because it's written on paper, we have people now checking property cards versus the, versus the paper application, even for simple things like phone numbers and stuff.
Yeah. So
what we will do is what we do with the train station and the Muni people is we stay in touch with them. So, it's easy to email them. It's easy to do mass emails. When when we had to tell the train station and the muni parking people that these big giant trucks were coming, we could do that as a mass email, okay, out to them. So, yeah, so we have the ability, by moving this into electronic, which, as everyone probably knows now, 95% of the office is electronic. We do everything electronically, including marriage licenses. So, so this will give us more information. We'll be able to sit with you and tell you more things that are going on. We'll be able to tell what neighborhoods are heavier than other neighborhoods, you know, with permitting, so that you can make more decisions later on that to improve the system constantly.
That's,
And we can disable the permits too,
and I think that's
which we
good.
do in the muni lot.
Which is good, but
I think
so,
Sue is also trying to say, from what I understood from a conversation, is people say, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? And the answer is not only that they hear it multiple times a day, but going forward, they will be able to look at data, not just like, it makes the step also stronger to extend, like, I know this is going on, believe me, but they'll also be able to say, here's the actual data. Because right now, it's hard to get actual data. So I think that'll be, but that's justifying the technology, which we don't need to hear. I mean, we know that there's a advantage.
It's part of that, it's part of the whole,
But
it's part of the reason we're doing it now, it's part of the reason that we're doing,
Yeah,
we wanna move in this direction this time.
right.
so,
I know you have more questions.
yeah, so for me, I think that, you know, taking away the ability to get a permit is good.
Yes.
But majority of the summonses are actually from no tag parking, so which means they don't have a permit to take away. So in those instances,
That's what-
rather than 150 every time,
Oh,
might it be, you know, might there be a way to do a sliding scale for repeat offenders?
Well, as,
I can
as,
answer that question. As a prosecutor, I get all the tickets.
Mhm.
So if someone comes in, and I will also say this, people with a large number of tickets, they never come in. So we have to deal with them separately. Most of them don't show up, but if they come in with, let's say, 10 no tag tickets, then it's sort of prosecutor's discretion as to what I'm gonna do with those tickets. How many of them will they pay on? I will tell you that I rarely have ever imposed the penalty above the fine. Because I know this sounds, maybe it's a bleeding heart for me. A lot of these people simply cannot afford to pay a lot of money for these tickets. And so what happens is, you know, if they have 10, I may make them pay for 7, but I don't reduce the $50. In other words, so it'll be 7 times $350, and they'll pay that. And most will do that. Most will ask for time to do it, but they'll do it. You know, in some of the more egregious cases, it's a higher number. But in terms of a sliding scale, if I know that someone has 10 tickets, I'll be able to sort of figure out what that is. The big selling point for someone to try to resolve their tickets is I will also show them what the total amount is right now with all the fines and penalties. And it's eye-watering what those numbers can do. I mean, you know, tonight I was just looking, you know, I was discussing with the lieutenant. I mean, we have some folks who have, we have one person who has 167 open tickets, another with 99, another with 114. Now those go back to 2023, but some of them actually are still getting tickets. So we're gonna have to deal with that in a different way because those folks don't show up. But in terms of how to deal with it, I don't think you need the sliding scale because whoever is gonna be the prosecutor is basically gonna sort of just deal with that. In terms of when they come in and see what those numbers are.
so I guess for me, the question, Pat, is, what are you trying to solve for? Are you looking at the numbers and saying there's a big chunk, however one defines big chunk, that sort of circumvent the whole system? They don't even bother coming in, they don't show up to court, they don't. So the fees don't work, because it's just more of what they're already not doing.
Well, if I may, we are actively working with counsel's office for a long-term plan for scofflaw resolution. So those people that just say, forget it, give me a ticket, what are you gonna do? May end up having their vehicle impounded until they resolve those issues.
Well, that's
So-
good, that was gonna be the next question.
Yeah.
But
And
again, that's down, you know, that's.
It's down the road.
It's just not mentioned here, so it's, again, you go by 80-20 rules, so out of the big chunk that don't even. Because as turns, no matter what codes we do and how hard we all work, the people that totally circumvent. Are the ones that actually get away with stuff, and so the fees get them.
Right.
There's the people that once in a while do something, I mean, there's always negotiations that go on. Because it's not a punitive system, it's a system that says. You need to have parking if you own cars, it's one of the things that has to happen when you own a car.
But for those small percent that are the or what people, that's the or what,
Yeah, that's right.
That comes later, down the
not the
line.
labor.
Not recommended in this yet.
No.
But by working with more, do you mind if I just, by working more with the landlords, as the village manager said. By working more with the landlords and stuff, we will eliminate some of the excess permitting that's given out right now. I can guarantee it. You know, so it's, you know, but we wanna make sure that if somebody's kids still live with them, even though they're in their twenties, which happen a lot now. 30s. That, you know, that we have an answer for that too, but for people that, it's amazing how many, new people we get in.
Right, just two more quick questions for you.
So we actually, the agenda here, this is the big topic.
So
Big
the.
topic.
Reinforcement.
On the question of the one permit per licensed driver, cars can be registered under one name, but if the applicant is asking for 4 permits, they must demonstrate they're 4 licensed drivers. How did you pick 4? And
That was an
why not?
example.
That was just an example.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if,
so,
again,
so,
it
so,
could be
so it would be written, the policy would be written in a way such that
one.
you must demonstrate the number of licensed drivers licensed at that address.
At that address.
For the
You know,
number.
and look, things will come up, you know, my daughter lives at home, but she's going to school in Ithaca and she wanted to register to vote there, so her license says Ithaca. That's okay, a student ID or, you know, something like,
You know, students here that go to Pace.
you know, there's things that we can, you know, be understanding of, if they're reasonable requests that, you know, so again, not to be punitive and be a little bit flexible for not everything falls into the box you need it to. But the idea would be that if somebody came in, what seems to happen, people come in and they're like, I have 5 cars registered and I need 5, you know, and I have 5, we don't really know, you know, so. Again, it's not that we're trying to pry into your personal life, but what you're asking for is parking on a public street, we have a lot, we have more people who need the parking than we have parking to give. So we have to, in fairness to everybody, at least say, you need to make sure that, we need to make sure that those people are living there and they're living in a, you know, a place that accommodates that number of people and, you know.
And honestly, it's only the street part,
Some of this is for the public.
Yeah.
so people have kids living at home, but they have a driveway or a garage, they might wanna clean the garage out. But
Or they just
have a
don't wanna
garage,
shift cars around.
you know, but you can't just say that you're in a, you know, 2-family car with 2-family house with 14 cars. It's like 14 driving adults who are paying insurance and for cars working there. So, you know, I'm exaggerating, although I suspect I'm not exaggerating as much as I'd like to, because I think people do walk in and say, I need 10.
Yes.
Here's one license. It's like, you know, we gotta get a little bit better than that. The challenge is, is it 3, is it 5? I mean, I think the challenge is a number. What we do know for a fact is that the street, we can't widen the streets anymore, and we can't lengthen them. And we can't take out fire hydrants, and we can't make the fire trucks smaller, if they can make smaller turns. This is what we have. This is how much room is there, and so we're gonna have to, over time, with data, hopefully also figure out some of the information.
So we're not in the business of parking your 5 cars because you love cars, you know what I mean? That's what I have.
Yeah. Cool.
What else?
So last clarifying question was on the further considerations page, the fraudulent application fine. Is that? Is that just to clarify, right? Because these are policy items, right? And so if someone's asking for 4 permits on one application, is it $500 per permit requested on the application or $500 per application?
This would be, I mean, that's a good question. So if they, I think it really could potentially be for every application. So the way the applications are set up now, you can only do up to 2 cars per application. So your application can, you go, each application can only they max out at 2 permits per application. So if you did 3 applications for 6 cars and you forged your name, we certainly would have the latitude to interpret it as you forge a signature 3 times. But I think that, there would be some level of, understanding, if it was an honest mistake or, people really have a hard time and sometimes landlords aren't really clear on who owns the property. So we would err in making sure that the people who are really taking the most egregious advantage would be subject to a higher level of insurance.
And if any of you have a train station permit or a mini permit right now, you know that you create an account and you put those cars on the account. Now, in the train station, you can have 3 cars on the account, but you can only park 1 at a time. I want to tell that to the public for the 1,000th time. But in muni parking, you can take one of those cars and put it in and buy a muni permit with it. This will add on to that. So it's going to change the norms around here. It's gonna change, because we always did it that way. In my office, I have the big circle with a line through it. And because we're going to work with the landlords, like we're gonna start now working with the landlords, okay? So, because we're gonna communicate with them, we're gonna send them emails. They've already taken all the spreadsheets and, I don't even know what a pivot table is, but you can pivot table them and you can do all this stuff. I don't have to do it, that's
Beautiful
good.
piece of furniture.
It is, I know, but, yeah, I'm showing my age a little bit. But because we're changing the norms, you're absolutely correct, Mayor, that 80% of the people will do the right thing all the time. 10% of the people might go overboard, to do the right thing. And 10% of the people are gonna try to screw up, and that's our job. We do it every day with the muni lots and the, train station. So we can continue doing it now with the on-street parking.
Yeah, and so my question, all of my questions are really, yes, the question, what's the problem?
What's the problem?
And all my questions are really targeting that last 10%, right? In terms of how do you make it either more painful or more onerous or clearer in terms of what the penalty is. Like that's.
I think that the key is always to remember that this is done for entire neighborhoods. When you look at individuals, it's like, how could you do this to this one person? They can't do this, so they're not able to do that, and why? Yeah, we don't do loss for one. If you've got 4 cars, because you wanna have 4 cars.
Find a place to park them.
Well, great, yeah, but park them.
Yeah.
Because your 4 spots are taking up your neighbor's 2 spots.
Well, it's the same thing with
like,
these
yeah,
gigantic
other
trucks.
people.
It's
The huge trucks that take up a lot of spot, the landscaping trucks that take up a lot of spot. And I don't think people think about it or recognize it enough. We spoke about it earlier today, Karen and I. I just don't think some people know. And shame on the landlords who make themselves invisible, live in Florida or Michigan, wherever the hell they all live. There's some responsibility here. They can't just say, I collect rent and I'm walking away from responsibility. We have to track them down and say, you can't go online and say that you're offering, 4 online parking spots for what you're renting. But they're not yours. You don't get to rent them out. It doesn't matter that they're free, they're not yours. And so I think a lot of this, and you see this a lot, nothing I'm saying, by the way, it's like writing a song, nothing I'm saying is something I made up. All of this is actually things that have happened, things that are real. And they're
It'll
not.
be in the book.
And they're not.
Writing a book.
Sue and I will be writing a book about the day in my life book. That will never happen. But there are 12 hours a day, but I mean, these are problems to be solved, and what's gonna happen is, it's a building block, so, I mean, I keep saying kudos for you guys for taking that, this has been going on for a long time. And it's all over the river towns, especially with these older streets, and again, not to get all excited about, well, I live in an apartment, how does this, it doesn't affect. You have a parking lot, or especially in the newer ones, if it's a condo, you have parking in condos, that's part of the condos. This is really about the smaller neighborhoods and what some of them, are going through. Deputy Mayor, questions, comments, suggestions, brilliant thoughts, any of the above?
Okay, well, thank you for all of the hard work that has gone into this, really appreciate it. First, I want to start with the police perspective. I've heard from Madam Clerk and from our intrepid manager, but I'd love to hear the police perspective in terms of enforcement and all that. Any comments or additions you would make to the presentation from your end?
No, parking is a complicated issue. A lot of people think that it's very simple and, you know, you either park there or you don't. There's a lot of layers to this. I grew up on Linden Avenue in a family of 6, and I would have welcomed this growing up because a lot of people flooded our neighborhood to park because they didn't have parking in their neighborhoods, et cetera. So I think it makes a lot of sense. We are completing an exhaustive study internally right now that I know that Chief Zimmerman will be eager to present to the board. That involves parking and parking enforcement and a goal to reach the enforcement saturation level at which it becomes that point at which people who maybe flout the law say, all right, maybe I really do need to comply here because every time I do the wrong thing, there's a consequence. So that's something that we need to work towards finding that level of enforcement. But that's part of a larger conversation. But I think this is an important step toward that.
Thank you. The property cards that y'all brought up, can you describe what these are? Are these texts that give information? Do they have
No,
images?
they have pictures on them. If you go to the assessor's office or you go online to the town of Ossining and you go to the assessor department, you can look up your own property card. And, you know, the only big thing right now is we are using the property cards for landlord information at this point. Because sometimes the property cards from the building department files are not the same. The ultimate goal would be to have them the same, but you know, it's not. The assessor's office is what they see, and the building department is what they've been permitted for and what have you. So what we want to do is, like, I'll give you an example. I saw a landlord name on one of the applications, and they're trying to read this very cryptic writing, and it said A33, and I know it's ABB. So it was the first one that I spotted, and I said, okay, look at their property card. And so now they're doing it on split screens where they're actually checking for 2020, all of 2025, and up to where we are, up to 1,034 or whatever we are at in 2026. So we're already 1,000 and we're not even 6 months into the year. So they're looking at that to get the information. Then, because we spend a lot of time explaining to people that somebody that just because you live in somebody's apartment does not make them your landlord. Okay, the landlord is the property owner. I think we'll see a shift when people say, oh, this guy says he lives in my building. He doesn't live in my building. That's why we're going to concentrate for a little bit, not intensely, not more than anything else we've done, but on the landlord section end of it. We would like to see people being able to park in their own neighborhoods. Right now, I have people come in, they gotta walk through the blocks, I got people that come in. And I have the same issue with the muni parking. You know, we took the big parking lot away, you know, the back parking lot, for the garage, which is fine. And we haven't had as much friction as we thought we were gonna have. But, you know, I can't, when I have somebody and she goes, well, I get home at 4 o'clock in the morning. I cannot guarantee you a spot. Near your house, you'll find a spot, but it won't be near your house. So we'd like to move more people back into their neighborhoods where they can park, if we can. Okay, especially on those, and I'll use Linden as an example, because Linden's a perfect example. I'd say half to 3/4 of those houses don't even have driveways.
Or a few.
Yeah, because it's an old part of the village, and but you go up by me, And we all have driveways, you know what I mean? So we have to really watch, but we'll be able to come back, we'll be able to give you guys reports as to this is how many permits we have out on Linden, this is how many, and I'm only using that as an example, all you people that live on Linden. Don't call me tomorrow. You know, or different neighborhoods, just taking a neighborhood, okay? So I think that as we get more and more information and as this thing grows and change, it will change. And none of us are saying, oh, it has to be this way or the highway. No, we're working on it. We've changed dramatically since starting to think about it. When we started thinking about taking it over. It is a monster. But we have gotten it down to where it's not a scary monster anymore. So it's, you know, it's, yeah, but I can tell you, I can go into somebody, I can knock on somebody's door and say, you have 6 permits. You don't need 6 permits. You know, and I'm not scared of nobody. I got these guys behind me, right?
Way behind.
Literally.
Yeah,
literally.
right, in another building, but, yeah, so but it's interesting, the whole thing is interesting, and we do have students that go to Pace. We have students that go to Mercer University that live here, we have, you know, because they can rent here, and they rent apartments here and stuff, so we know there's all those considerations, we have out-of-state plates, in some instances, but explain to us why you're out of state. You're not out of state because you can't be bothered, or, you know, or you just didn't change your plates. Many years ago, I remember.
You're not supposed to do that, or you're not supposed to have your car registered.
Yeah, but if you're,
To be a resident here.
right, but if you're a resident, but if you're a student, and
Right.
they're brought their car from home. But I remember the old days when we used to have thousands of Connecticut plates in, okay? Right, that got
Yeah.
resolved with the New York State licenses.
You know, I think it's worth mentioning too, obviously, we're on the enforcement side, but, you know, while to the mayor's point, this isn't about revenue. There is the fact that work is being done, employees are working on these things. So an increase in fine does offset some of the tax burden, on folks who are already paying for this work through their taxes. So not a money grab, but certainly the work is already being done. These people are making salaries. You know, I think it's important that some of that be offset.
And we can't go up to $1,000 a permit. Cause that's what I think it costs right now to issue a permit. It's a very expensive process.
Can you explain for, streets that have bold signs overnight parking, how does street cleaning work if there's always cars there?
So if you look, that's the green line, right?
Yeah.
And it's really just that small little section,
Yeah.
you know, that's, and I apologize. If you wanna see a nice big thing, there's one right out in the wall, out in the hallway, and we have one inside the office too, with the same map.
It's Charter Circle.
It's Charter Circle.
It's Charter
Yeah,
Circle.
thank you.
Is it Charter Circle? I think it might be Charter Circle, yeah.
So that's the only place, like a lot of the streets are one side overnight parking. Okay,
Or no, or not.
Or not. or not,
The alternate side, obviously for snow removal, thinking that
Yeah.
that's a little bit different, and then we have a snow emergency street.
Right,
right.
But, you know, I'd have to really talk to Paul about how they address it, but my guess is that the street cleaning needs may not be quite as rigorous as they are like some Main Street or some of the other streets, so I.
And it's the same thing on one side, if it's always the same side.
The one side is always the same side, so I can talk to, you know, I'll ask Paul and I'll.
I don't
don't have a good
yeah.
answer, I don't know what the official answer
but it's
is.
an interesting map, isn't it?
I love it. Why is
Good
it,
Valerie.
why is it 3 AM to 6 AM? Why
It's
not?
always- Because that's the law that you're, what year?
Excuse me, there is a sign in your office that says that's the way it's always.
Yeah, I know. But I don't know what year that law went into effect.
But it's not a local law, it's New York State because well, we have adopted it locally, but like the hardship parking program is a New York State piece of legislation. I don't know exactly what the terminology is, but the officers might be better suited, but basically.
Yeah.
I used to work midnights, that's when the street cleaner goes around.
And to answer part of your question is those street cleaning trucks are remarkably nimble. I've worked many 3 to 6 AM shifts and they'll clean even if there's just one car
Yeah.
not parked there. They'll go in there and sweep it. It's pretty
They are
remarkable.
So yes, that's true. They can go in.
More nimble.
So even if they can't get the whole street, they'll get any spots that are open when they come through.
So Stuart is, I mean, I understand that the 3 to 6 or whatever is saying, it's basically saying there's no overnight, so there's a
Right.
spot where you just can't do overnight. Is it a New York State that we adopted? I mean, I heard it from this side of the room, but I didn't hear it. You
I'm
actually.
pretty sure it
We
is,
got it before.
but it's been 3 to 6 for a very long time. The last change that this board made to overnight parking was in 2015. At that time, Linden Avenue was overnight parking both sides, and then you changed it to alternate.
Well, not on this.
And that was the
Good,
last
well done,
change.
board.
There have been no changes since 2015 in streets.
So I will tell you that as I go through different towns, and I actually looked at this at some point, like years ago. I've never seen less than 3 to 6, but I have seen like midnight. To serve the same purpose, I've seen, a longer window of not parking overnight. This is very typical. This is the one I see when I drive like throughout Westchester.
You
Parts
don't
of
really
it.
notice it until you start looking for it too.
Yeah.
Every entrance to our village has a sign on it that says no
And to
parking.
almost every village
Yeah.
in Westchester.
But it's also not like if you get up at 3 o'clock and leave your car, because your car could have been there from 6 PM to 3 AM and you just are allowed to stay till 6 AM, then you can.
But that's, yeah.
The,
Because we also don't want people parking their cars and leaving them there forever.
correct, yeah.
Right, like
Yeah.
weeks at a time.
Can you explain, how temporary passes work? If you need a temporary.
Currently?
Yeah.
Work. Yeah. So what happens is someone comes in with their information, it gets checked. They have to have some identification that says they live there, some piece of mail that they live there. They have to have their driver's license and everything. And then they get a temporary permit before they leave the office. They pay their $90, right now it's $90. They pay the $90, they get a temporary permit. At that point, the whole thing starts that the police check that they are, that they or do live, well, that they don't have any parking, which was the building department too. But the building department is so inundated with other work that it went on a back burner. So these guys check the registration that's valid, and that it's valid, because they're taking registrations. I mean, I can't tell you how many people come in with expired registrations. And I go, you gotta go get another one, and you can get it right, you can renew right now online, and that takes like 10 minutes. So, so they get a temporary permit, and then we see if anything is bad with the permit, and then 25 days later, they mail them their permit, their year permit, or because it's a quarterly thing, it could be 10 months, it could be 11 months, it could be, that's the big, where I see the problem is that we're getting gypped out a little bit of time. So that's what they do. That's how the temporary permit works.
And if you had someone, if you wanted just like a 24-hour pass or something like that, could you do something like that?
Well, you have 5 days. There's no such thing as a 24-hour pass, because we don't charge people to park on the street during the day.
But if you had like a guest, that
Okay.
was staying over.
So we have pieces of paper in the office that they take, they call up all the time too, they're having their driveways paved.
Right.
Or guest.
Or guests.
941 park.
Yeah, we have a piece of paper in Spanish and in English that says, if you have somebody staying over, you call after 5 PM, get an answering machine, you leave where your car is parked, your license plate, and the make of the car. Okay? It happens to be a young man right now, the young man checks it, and then he doesn't give them tickets. If
As
they,
long as they are parked where you can park
Yes.
overnight.
yeah, it has to
If they
be,
park where you're not allowed overnight,
Right.
you will get an improper area ticket.
right, thank you, sir, for pointing that out, and also, you have 5 nights that you can use that,
Every 6 months.
every 6 months.
But our hope is also that as we move this to the FBS online, that folks won't have to physically make that phone call. They can pop online, they can type in their license plate, and then the system will not recognize it after the 5th time in 6 months.
But that's
That's an evolution, yeah.
Right, and just to add on to that, you know, it's not a perfect system right now. We have the overnight parking enforcement officer who does a tremendous job. And writes the bulk of those tickets, but police officers do also write tickets from 3 to 6 a.m. for overnight parking violations. And they don't have that same list of license plates accessible to them. So it does occasionally happen that somebody gets a ticket who called in, but we keep a record of that and the ticket is dismissed. So there is a safeguard there. And to the point about technology, the hope is that going forward, eventually we will be stickerless. There will be no permit. It'll all be digital. And in that case, there really should be no errors in that way.
So the last thing that I'll say, this has been incredibly helpful. There's so many little details. I'm a big fan of all the work that has gone into all the changes. And my colleague trustee Yos has gotten to in the distribution that 10%, the scoff law, the folks that are, so I want to speak to the other side of the distribution, the 10% of the Magoo. That's me, okay? This is what happened. It happens 3 or 4 times a year. It's very typical for me. So what happens is I have a driveway, but I park the car in front of my house for whatever reason, and then I forget to bring it into the driveway, and then I get a ticket. Or I have guests that's staying overnight. They park in front of that, just forget to tell them you got to put it in the driveway. They'll get to move the car. You got to do it. The way we forget. So I'm, with that in mind, still in favor of increasing the fines and doing the whole thing, but just recognizing that there is a part of the distribution of people that are just, you know, living their lives, honest mistake, things happen, whatever.
And that, again,
100%.
And that's what I deal with.
yeah, and that's the
That's the
process.
prosecutor's job.
Right.
If they are, if they make a good explanation.
Yeah.
That ticket will likely get dismissed. If they're full of crap, they'll pay. It's the bottom line. So, I mean,
And
it's real simple.
prosecution made decisions aren't made, you know, based on whether the prosecutor thinks the person looks honest. There's a record. So if you say, oh geez, I made a mistake and you have 30 tickets this year, you know, sorry.
It's a lot of mistakes.
That's a lot of mistakes, right?
With the 941 part, if in fact people get a ticket, is they will have on their phone that they called.
Yeah,
They will have like that they left the message. Same with the muni, they will show me that, and, okay, we recommend this dismissal.
My favorite is that they write to me at 2 a.m. when I get up. It's like.
So I will say in my experience, Mr. Kahan and whoever has handled prosecutions has always erred on the side of being very fair to the people parking. And again, the decisions aren't made, you know, based on somebody's, you know, tale. It's based on facts. So, well done.
Thank you. Let the record show, I just pay the fine. I always pay, I don't want no special treatment. I just pay the fine. It is what it is. Okay, go ahead.
Dan? Well, there's not a whole lot left to ask, but I have a question because, you know, some communities, I think around here, use the boot.
The what?
Boot, like boot your car,
That one?
Oh, yeah.
right? Some do.
Yes, that's correct.
That
the
is,
private parking lots around here use the booth.
yeah,
But
but
we
I know
have,
some municipalities do
Yes.
as well. And is that for the stop laws or the people who are always, like, if you have to impound a car, you'll.
Yes, that's correct. Right now, the only boot that the Ossining police have are the ones that we wear. We don't have a boot. We have not invested in that. Right now, it is something that's discussed on a fairly
every
regular
couple of
basis.
years, people suggest it, yeah.
Right now, to my mind, before we make an investment in infrastructure, even that small, we're not talking about a tow truck, it's just a piece of metal. Before we're gonna make an investment like that, we need to do a better job of handling scoff laws using what we already have. So we're not impounding cars right now. Before we can justify making an investment of taxpayer money in a boot, we have to show that it's enough of an issue that we need to have that in place, and it's not gonna collect dust to somewhere when we get the 10 or 20 worst offenders off the road. So it's not off the table, but not something we're ready to invest in yet.
Because that might be a better deterrent than even raising the fines. I mean, if people
Well, eventually,
know
you know,
who's gonna, could be there.
Yeah,
That's worse
so-
than they can't drive a car at all.
Right, so right now the plan is, because we have people who are in the 5 figures in parking tickets, is that we will locate those vehicles and we will impound them. So, you can't drive a car that's not there when you come back to it. So that's the initial plan. If it becomes such a regular thing that the impounding becomes a hindrance and is taking up so much of our time that just booting it and driving away would be better, for sure, we can go down that route. But, until we're at that point where it's part of our regular workflow to handle these scoff laws, just doesn't make sense to invest in something, where are we keeping it? Who's gonna drive it around? Who's putting the boot on? Where right now we can locate those vehicles, call and impound and just move
And
on.
the thing about the boot is you actually have to be there, and the reason Boston, I think, still has it is because they just call whoever has it, and they're like, they zoom in and they.
Right.
They do that also, frankly, not just to punish that person, like the 800 people that pass by that car go, oh my God, I gotta remember never to park illegally. I mean, it's like the minute I moved up there, everyone I knew, I moved into an apartment, everyone said to me, do not park on these two, they will boot you. And like, it's the fear of God, like, so you park legally because that's exactly. what's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
so for sure, not off the
So
table in the
there's two
future,
reasons
but
to have them. One's a symbol also of saying, this is what happens.
yeah,
But
we need
the big players.
Because you
not
raise
not
the-
small players.
You raise the fee or the cost or this, so that could mean they can go more. You
Right,
know?
but,
And they're not paid, that's not paid either.
you don't buy the really good golf clubs until you've just, proven that you're gonna go to the range every so often. Same mentality, until we polish up our parking enforcement game and get it to where we can't do any better with what we have, then we'll make further investments.
Because they do have the ability to impound.
Right,
Can you limit the number of hardship per property? You say no property can, can
Well, it
have
depends.
more than, can ask, request more than X number.
Anyway, you have apartment buildings. You have,
Right.
yeah, we have to.
We could talking about like non-conforming, like at Ellis Place, we have a lot of.
Yeah.
Or a lot of renters, like happen to have, and, there are some houses, a few that have no driveways, and those people, I guess, have hardship. But, what was I gonna say? It's hot in here, I could barely.
It is hot.
It
I'm
really-
like falling asleep.
It actually did get hot in here.
I don't have an answer to that,
Yeah.
because so if you're doing it for multifamily, it becomes really hard, because if it's a 4-family with 1 bedrooms, it's gonna be one amount. If it's legitimately based on legal appropriate occupancy. If it's a 4-unit with a 3-bedroom and a 4-bedroom, it's gonna be, and 2-bedroom, it's gonna be different. So that becomes really hard and somewhat punitive in a sense on people who are living in larger units that may have more adults who drive. We could, however, we didn't really discuss it here because it's not right now, probably our most critical issue. But we are starting to see in neighborhoods that have off-street parking, but that typically maybe, are more uniform single residencies. If that becomes a problem, we could evolve this to say, if for single family homes, we are capping this at 6 parking spaces if you don't have a driveway, I'm just saying for argument's sake. And that might, I think that is something that we're considering. We didn't put it in now because I'm not sure we have.
But what you have to remember too is that we have the ability, even now with the paper, we have the ability to say, at 123 Bark Street, I don't wanna use any streets that we have here, okay? We have 25 permits right now. That becomes an instant problem. Then we sit down, we talk about it, we see what they have. We'd like to see how that changes, how that evolves when we're more strict with the landlords and stuff like that. And
But I
so,
think those landlords can be really fine.
Yeah,
he'd be shocked.
but now they're able to, now they have reason to.
Yeah.
Because
they're like
their tenants are all gonna
LLCs.
call them and
Oh, is
say,
it-
I
is
don't
it a lot
wanna
of
be paying the
trust?
rent if I can't, like you said, I can park my 3
Right.
cars. I can't park the cars and I don't wanna pay thousands of dollars, so what are we doing here? Like, there's gonna be pressure coming.
There's there is now and there's been more, but again, you're changing norms. Changing the norms. The norms around here is that we do it this way, and that I have people come in every day and I go, no, you're not getting 6 permits. And they go, I got 6 permits last year. I go, okay. It's like the people that came in and said right after we started really enforcing overnight parking, and they go, I've been parking in front of my house for 30 years. And I go, wow, you got away with murder. You know, it's like, but it's gonna ever change, it's gonna ever evolve, this whole program. But I think if we take this step now, that we'll be able to, really give the information that, you know.
A picture of how parking, like our legitimate parking need today is emerging. That will be able to be more responsive to meeting the needs of those people. And again, that this is the first step. The second step will be reevaluating, do we have the off-street parking on the right streets? And then we'll, you know, again, perfection will be the enemy of the good here, because there's no way to get this perfect. But we think that we're doing some things that will improve again.
Dana, are you done with your questions? Okay.
If I could just
So-
add one thing, you know, one thing that's become clear over the last X period of time, that we on the police side have been investing a lot of time in the concept of parking and doing some studying on our end. We've realized that we don't have some of the metrics that we have to give a 100% accurate picture of parking in Ossining. So I think that all of these steps are going to help to bring the picture into clearer focus. You know, we're tracking now summonses per mile that the overnight parking enforcement officer is issuing, things like this that have never really been measured before, to sort of get that clear picture. You know, it's that, what's that old, you know, the unknown unknowns, like we don't know some of the things that we don't.
We don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, we don't even know some of those things that we need to know. But we're collecting that data in a more earnest way than we've ever done before. And I think that this is all gonna be an ongoing battle, of course, but it's gonna get better along the way.
Without it being cost prohibitive because of the amount of people, because, you know, we can do it through these systems that we have.
But this is one of those things too, that the better we do it, the better the outcome on the other side. So, you know, there's an offset there.
So I think for me, thank you for doing this. The sort of bookend to the conversation is thanks for bringing up a lot of what I think someone's gonna ask, so it made it easier. There's a few things. There was some bullet point that we're gonna look at it for 6 months and then a number of months to reevaluate. That may change a little bit, whatever, but the idea is there's some milestones, and so we're able to say, okay, we're not gonna sit here and change because 3 people walked in and said, how could you not consider this? We're gonna collect it, otherwise we're never gonna move forward, right? This is like being on a highway. I mean, you cannot be on the entrance ramp the entire time. We're now past the entrance ramp, we're on the highway. We're gonna get most of it right because of staff, like for lots of people. And comparison to other communities and all sorts of stuff that's gone into it, so let's assume we're gonna get most of it pretty good. Some of it we forgot, we didn't do, whatever, it doesn't matter, otherwise you can't get anything done, you can't get anything off the ground. So we're on the highway now, out of the entrance ramp, onto the highway, narrow lane, let's see where we go. We'll look at some data, we'll get some feedback, thank you. I don't know if you had an FAQ after our conversation today.
Yeah, I did.
That was very quick, so one of the things I suggested is an FAQ. Codes are very hard to understand unless you know how to read them. I find it difficult to understand. And they try to be very precise, so we always get the first person the next day after these meetings coming in and telling us or telling the clerk, like, this is wrong, you can't do this, you can't do that. I get that. There are 30,000 people who live here, so they'll be the one that says you got it wrong, whatever. Let them come in, all good, welcome all advice. But I think we're gonna collect some questions and we're gonna do FAQs that says this is the frequency. I'm not sure people know they're not supposed to have, companies running out of their homes that require 7 or 12 cars. Maybe they know it, maybe they don't. I don't know. I don't know, people move in from other municipalities around the country. They move in from New York City where the laws are totally different.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if they realize that if there's no sign like there is in cities, that that doesn't mean, like, if there's a plot of land, you can park there because there isn't an actual sign right there telling you can't. I don't know if people understand that they're not entitled to parking in the street literally in front of their house. And if somebody else parks in front of their house, they can call the police and tell them to move the car. That's not a thing. It's just not a thing. I actually don't know if people know, right? Like, I don't know. So I think having FAQs, which we will accumulate information, will be like, a did you know? We're trying to do that with the building department. And by the way, and no, you can't have really long trucks that then go onto the sideway, not allowed. You don't have to have commercial plates to be considered a commercial vehicle. You probably thought you did, I actually thought that years ago myself, but it's only if it has commercial. It could have ladders, it could have, you know, everything on it, that's actually.
People
Not
spend
true.
a lot of time not getting commercial.
And, you know, if you put a big sign that says Eureka Levin's cleaning service, which by the way, I do not have one, across an entire Subaru, that's a business. So it doesn't matter if it's a small Subaru, like, I don't think people know a lot about this stuff, so I think it would be really helpful if we do FAQs. If we tell people what's going on, we have to, like, in the mayor's message, we have to like let people know that there's change occurring. So I know this says for July 1. So my only,
Well, July 1 will
for the
simply be,
enactment,
yeah, they'll still get their little tags for their
Right.
windows, they'll still get their
Right.
temporary tags, they'll still, we're gonna move them slowly into doing it online. So that hopefully,
We'll be initiating it, we'll have the packages ready with the information ready to go with the policy changes.
cause that's in 2 weeks, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, if, maybe
but
It's
we-
aspirational, it's
it's
aspirational.
aspirational, but over, you know, if the board is in agreement with the policy changes, you know, all the things we described that we'd like to do, the guardrails, then we'll start moving ahead on that, and if it's not July 1, if it's.
Alright, so you let them know, it seems very aggressive to me, cause
It
people have
might
to be
be.
informed.
It might be, so we
People
could,
have to be
we could
informed
do it,
of
we could move that
changes.
to August, one, and just have plenty of time.
Okay. My
Let them
other,
just make it a little
my other
easier.
question is, thing about having residential, which I know they do in other parts of the country, in other parts of the world, where residents like, it's usually that they actually paint the curbs, so it's colored for residents, so only they can park there overnight. Dana Levenberg is working on it, how long does it take to get something like this
That's
done?
another agenda item, so Valerie will be, Matt will be talking about it right after this, in more detail.
I thought it was in this presentation. It was
If we
on one of the-
referenced it, but they actually sent a memo describing the details of that
Okay.
program.
Yeah, I saw that.
A little bit, you know,
So it's in here, but you'll just.
yeah, so we're gonna discuss that in more detail in a second.
Okay,
Two things though, one is if you are comfortable with the fees, we can have resolutions on for the fee changes, at next week. Or we can do that at budget time or at a later date.
okay, so I guess we always, I do not wanna make this 45 minutes discussion about the fees, we always get caught up with the fees. I have no opinion about the fees, I know they have to be higher, I'm gonna take your word for it, because I don't, and I know you checked other municipalities, and I know you checked what others charge. And I know there will be people that will say it's too high, no one ever calls me up, at least maybe they do to others and tell me we charge too little for anything. So that's not gonna happen. So I assume the homework was done, I don't know what the right number is, so I leave it, if you guys have opinions about it, I know why we're doing it. And I know that almost in everything, from the parks to the munis to, the Metro North Station, we are consistently, if not the cheapest in Westchester County, one of the least expensive. Which means, not that I care about that, I mean, that's very nice, the problem is, that means other localities come here because of that. Like our parks or this and that, I'm not upset about it, I'm just saying that's one of the outcomes of such a thing. So do you have an opinion about, you mentioned before that you wanted actually higher in some ways.
Only against in the stop law.
Okay.
Which we can accommodate within the.
Some examples,
Yeah.
board,
I'm not comfortable with always, I just feel like. I don't know, everything's so expensive, we're not help, it just doesn't help to keep raising our fees. I'm sorry, I just,
What would you do? Would you keep it the same?
what was it, 50 to 150?
no, 90.
90 to 120. You're talking about two different things.
There's the fee for.
Somebody has to speak up for the fact that, you know, everything costs an arm and a leg, and just keep making it work.
Understood, well,
I mean, we're not making it worse, but it's just incurring more hardship on people who already don't have money.
we are sensitive to that, and acutely sensitive to that. But we also, there's challenges to both sides because those costs are borne of the entire community. And whether you need hardship working or not, one way or another, when we have fees that are too low, the people who aren't taking advantage of that, they're somewhat subsidizing. It's just the reality. So always walking that, we are very sensitive and very sensitive that disproportionately, it's, you know, likely that if you need hardship parking, that there is an income skew. We can look at a lower increase, we can look, and we can have a discussion on this in a, you know, follow up with this, if that would, the board wants. For the penalties, though, the penalties are specific to people who are, you know, who are taking advantage of the system. They're meant to be a deterrent. If there are legitimate excuses, or maybe you just forgot, like sometimes we even have deputy mayors who may forget where to park. In that
I
case,
have no
you
pity.
can plead those, but if you wanna separate the annual fee, we are gonna have to make changes to fees for overnight parking and other things as we go forward, particularly in conjunction with the multimodal site, you know, because that's not gonna be a $90, right? That won't be feasible at $90 a year in a covered parking space. But I think that, you know, maybe we move forward, again, whatever the board decides, the majority, and Bob's not here, so I don't wanna blindside him. We can table the fee discussion, or we can just move ahead with the penalty fees and talk about the blanket overnight fee.
We can transition them with the.
Cause I have some young neighbors on Ellis Place who rent, and, you know, they're a young couple, they don't have much money, and he came home one night and he was tired, and for some reason parked in front of the house. Anyway, he wakes up and he has $400 for the tickets on his car. And maybe there was a registration issue, I don't know, but I just thought, oh
It had to
my
be some-
God.
But again,
Registration's
those are
$40.
things that you have the ability to, if he had that many things, he had a lot of issues.
Yeah.
That, you know, like, and again, in driving without registration is very dangerous and could be a lot more costly if you're getting an accident without your registration. So again, understood, but those are things that can be discussed with the prosecutor if there's hardship or, you know, payment plans. That's different. And I would not recommend, you know, playing around there as much. The fee for what it costs to buy the permit is a little different than the ticketing fees. I think sometimes though, you know, balancing what we're doing, it's just important to look at it very holistically. So, again, there's remedies for people who, have a hardship for paying a ticket and that's,
So we're using two terms here.
yes.
I originally thought years ago, hardship meant affordability. This is not about affordability, it's not about handicap parking, it is, because you don't have a driveway, because if you had a driveway, you should have enough room for the cars that you have, for the most part, I'm not saying, it could be a tiny little driveway for 2 cars, so when you have 4, I get that. It's really a hardship about using public space because you don't have a private space. And we have many issues around that have been built up over time. And it is, I mean, look, even now when we're building things and people were ticketed even though maybe they shouldn't have been, so they were just told, like, well, get rid of the ticket, so it's a mistake, you know, like, there is conversation that occurs, this is not, but yeah, I mean, really, I get many more complaints, and I can name the 3 streets of people, and also people that recently moved here and said, look, we don't have a driveway, but we should have enough space here, but my neighbor has a dozen cars here, like, it's ridiculous. Like, he should have 2 cars or 3 cars like the rest of us, but I have no parking because of the neighbor, not because of other issues. So he's gotta walk, it happened to, I get these emails always when the weather's bad. It's one thing to walk a couple blocks. Now, it's really different in the winter when it's dark and it's raining and you're coming home from work, but I don't know, we've gone back and forth. I'm okay with the recommendation because I don't have a better solution personally that I can think of right now, and we've talked about the spheres, and I think that you've sort of consolidated a lot of the ideas. Deputy Mayor, where are you on this? As far as the recommendation?
Yeah, I'm for tabling the fee for registering for hardship to.
The annual hardship.
The annual hardship.
Permit.
Correct. But moving forward with the fee increase for violations of what we just discussed.
Okay.
Okay. So, we're not voting because this is not a legislative session, but as we stand, the 4 of us, it's 2 and 2, which is fine, because I'm not falling on a sword.
The thinkers.
Why 6-1, Dana didn't want to, did you?
Okay.
What did
I'm okay moving forward with that as recommended.
I'm okay with moving forward, so I can move
Oh, okay.
2 of us.
Okay,
And
so.
those two
Who
are.
wants to table one thing and good with the
So
others?
it's like
When do you want to
two,
table,
two, three.
like, what would you get
With
you off the
Bob.
table? With Bob.
I just want Bob to.
What I would
I
recommend
see,
is,
so that's fine with me too, I thought you had a different
No,
solution.
I just want.
let's go forward with the recommendation, they will have the resolutions for the
And then we'll have fines.
fines, the
Yeah,
family will table the to a time when we can, maybe in conjunction, we're gonna be bringing this back, like, we need to.
uh,
The previous one with you, then I'm fine with the recommendation, but I want Bob.
yeah, the table is, you had an idea, you think, okay, so if it's, because the 5 should be here, that's fine. Bob did read the material, general comment was, it's good, but that doesn't mean he was specific about it, right? And we'll get specific. Dana? Can't talk as you can go and follow her, it's just that it's picking it all up. The other pieces of this is the technology piece that we ran through, which, always sounded really cool and fun. I just don't know what I think what it is, I don't know how much it is, I don't know how many.
It is the-
We see some station.
We're gonna be bringing recommendations for the budget season, we're gonna be and we'll also be looking at a long range plan, because we don't really think we'd be able to do this before 2028 fully anyway, so.
The technology,
No, the technology piece was got now.
Some of it,
Yeah.
but
I'm
not
talking about
the
the
plate
reader,
readers.
the plate reader.
Oh, the plate reader, oh,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
no, we're all saying the same thing, but not really.
Not the,
The
anything that
plate
has
reader has to be in the budget.
Yeah, and it has to be the budget, it has to be ordered, right?
Okay, so the other question I have, like, I would really like to understand what else it does. I mean, I'm not like suggesting taxpayer money for an item that does one thing and only one thing.
When we bring that capital request in, we will have a full presentation.
I'm assuming it's what New York City is doing on all its big bridges, which is catching all the ghost licenses and all the covered with cellophane and so that you don't have to pay tolls,
Same general technology,
hundreds of
just
those
different
per
function.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are, who knew that you could do that and not have to pay easy pass, not me until recently.
The one other thing that I'd like to say is the graphic designs in this presentation, though not quite the level of the police department and their AV technology and capability. But it's been big 300 years. Yeah. This was done by our manager's intern, Clayton
My buddy Clayton.
Clement, who couldn't be here tonight, was very disappointed that he couldn't be here tonight, but I do have to just briefly read one thing because he sent me a text. He was getting an award, he goes to Regis High School in the city, and he was getting an award tonight, so he couldn't be here, just graduated. He got award, the Hearn Speech and Debate Society of Regis High School awards him with the Ernie Sciotto Award to the senior most likely to use his excellent public speaking skills and vast knowledge of history and current events to serve in the service of the public good.
Oh,
So he can be here.
So,
That's
we had a graduation, was it only yesterday or was it
Yeah.
feeling real? Thank you for being there, I'm sorry you had to leave. Yeah, so our youth bureau, we had 8 graduates, I think it was actually 2 more, they weren't able to make it, he was actually there. They were, right? It's a highly successful youth bureau, he's one of our youth bureau bid, and we got a grant recently. So we're able to hire about 50, I think 50 people can get, 50 of these kids can get jobs. So, out of the 80 kids there, all 8 are going to college, he's going to William and Mary, yeah?
Yeah.
And there's somebody else, and at least 2 came up and said they either wanna be a mayor or village manager. I told the mayor's position is being held for the deputy mayor's 2 daughters, and they can have the village manager, because it's a really good career.
Well,
But we're very proud of them and.
We had a
some-
fabulous,
We're gonna get to it, and I think this is a great project, things that need to be done on this very complicated project, bringing technology, even like working with the team, because it's not confidential per se. I think it's just gonna be great, for some of our youth, so. Congratulations on that. What do we have?
okay, so next on our agenda, I'd like to say thank you to the superintendent and our clerk. But I would like to bring up Valerie Mountain for the talk about.
Don't we have a good eye?
I'm staying. So Valerie and Patty will be talking more specifically about the resident parking permit process. Okay, good evening.
Out in here, and I'm never hot, and so you must be boiling.
I'm usually the first to say it.
Literally don't want to hang them.
I've been sweating since.
I'm never too hot, so.
Okay, so, I will try to make this, pretty concise, so,
The heat's on, okay, great. Okay.
So we have been discussing the opportunity to implement a residential parking program in the village since we worked in Milton in one. Earlier, even though the parking study that we recruited them to help us with was focused on the downtown, we did also say, hey, by the way, we have some neighborhood specific issues that we could use some guidance with. So they were able to provide us with a memo, which at this point is a bit dated. But in speaking with Tom Brown, who's the head consultant, not much has changed. Basically, residential parking permit programs are something that, and what I was sort of alluding to before, there's a section of New York state law that basically says how local municipalities were limited from allowing use of their roads, basically. And so this is another example of that. What we would be looking for would be home rule legislation that would amend section 1640 of Article 39 of the Vehicle and Traffic Law. And that is a very fancy way to say that in a specific neighborhood that we mapped out, there would be restrictions on who would be able to park on the street 24 hours a day. That's not to say that no matter what, if you had a visitor, they couldn't also park, which there would be provisions for that. We also know that in certain parts of this neighborhood, there are commercial businesses who depend on having on-street parking. We would also have to make allowances for that. But by and large, the community that encompasses basically the downtown waterfront area, which is the majority of Water Street, also Little Main Street, Seaport, and most of Country Street are what would be most affected in our estimation by what's called these parking drivers. So the way that it's described typically is if there was a concert venue or a hospital or something neighborhood, that visitors going to those locations are now displacing people who otherwise would park in front of their homes in that neighborhood. So this is something that is not unheard of, but it is sort of a high bar to reach. As we listed in the memo, there have only been fewer than a dozen RPPs throughout New York State that have been authorized by the legislature, going back to really the origin of the court case that got this started in 1988. And all of them have to have the following four criteria in the program. One is identification of the specific streets and areas to be governed, which I just explained, we have that. The second is the right of the municipality to establish the times and days when restrictions apply to non-residents. It said, if a guest come in, what would basically be the provisions for local businesses and guests. C, a prohibition against requiring permits on streets where adjacent properties were zoned for commercial or retail use. This one might be a little tricky. And then the last one, a requirement for the allocation of 20% of space in the permit area to be provided for short-term parking of non-residents. And a requirement that the municipality provide the scheduled fees for residential parking permits. So similar to what we were just discussing, moving on to the application. So the only thing that makes this a little bit complicated, well, you can say the only thing, one of the things that makes this complicated is the fact that certainly on Hunter Street and then also on Lower Main Street, we have the commercial businesses. So we're gonna have to sort of engage the community in that neighborhood specifically about what they believe that their needs are. We are going to have to speak to the clerk's office and the police about the stretch in the train station parking lot that's 2-hour parking, about if we would like to expand that, and then that's where you're supposed to be parking. So there is some legwork to do with the community here. Of course, if the board of trustees wants to go forward.
Right, and I think we also spoke about potentially just having that residential parking on certain hours of the day too. In terms of, so that you do have commercial uses, and they could essentially still utilize.
I didn't know that could be done, so it doesn't have to be 20.
It doesn't have to be 24 hours. I think there's a lot of different levers here that we can pull. So I think that's why the community engagement for specifically this neighborhood, because they're the ones who will be affected by residential parking permit.
It's Seaport, Hunter and Seaport, not the same, Seaport and Laura are on top of one.
So the map, it's really just sort of this little triangle here, which is, you know, at the foot of Central Avenue going south.
Right.
To Seaport Road.
Right.
And then Hunter Street is a different sort of conversation because Hunter Street is dealing with another parking driver, which is, yes, correct. So that is probably gonna be the sticky wicket. So that's something that we're gonna have to be really thoughtful about how much of that street and during what hours we can accommodate the residential permit parking. So the good
So
news,
they're visiting hours in a penitentiary after a certain time of day.
I don't.
Alright, so that's, so like, if there's no visitors after 8 p.m., theoretically you could do 8 to whatever. So that would avoid any other conflict, potential conflict. Okay, I'm sorry, guys, I mean, I know.
Yeah, so I think, you know, there's a couple things that are going to require a little bit deeper study and, like I said, community engagement. But we do have a very clear roadmap for how this is to be accomplished. So the first step is to write a letter formally to the Assemblywoman and explain to her exactly what that we need to do, which will not be new to her, because we've been talking to her staff about this for quite some time. Once that has been submitted, and we do have a template without letters, we can do it pretty quickly. Her office will draft the legislation and a bill number will be attached to it. Once that happens, the board will have the opportunity or the obligation to adopt home rule legislation on the matter. And there's a whole bevy of paperwork that goes along with that, which obviously will be filled out by the manager's office. I'm sure help. So Steve Planner. But other than that, I have been led to believe by the chief of staff and also the legislative director that from that point, assuming you know there are no objections on the floor, that it's a relatively turnkey process. But most of the onus, of course, is on us to sort of develop this in a way that's going to pass muster against the state regulations. The other part of the good news is that that consultant from Nelson Nygaard, who I would say is probably one of the people we know who knows very much about this, has already been discussing with us the material memo and where we might like to go next. So we have enlisted a partner in making sure that this gets done properly. So I would assume, and you know, of course, now we missed the session, so now the next session, but I would imagine if we can get this drafted by the end of September, there's a pretty good chance that this could be done by the end of 2026.
So I just wanna see if I can recap. Number one, I love being optimistic, all great. I've been talking about this for years, so I never really had in mind understanding all this stuff. And now I actually get a much clearer understanding based on the write-up. You know, these 3 streets that we chose, why did we choose other ones? So we forget, not doing more the community builder I used to get. I heard you about it in the mid-1980s, which is a long time ago. It's been a dozen in the entire state that has over 20 million people and who knows how many municipalities. And we're not the first ones to ask for it. So it is a Herculean feat, but we're on the path, right? So this is, I think, this street C4 is really, really tough. So got that Hunter, as you stated, so I think this is like, something that might actually happen. So I think this is a good thing. The commercial thing, I think it is, you know, I think you're gonna have to find a spot. I don't think it's gonna be the whole road. Seaport's not that big, but I think it's gonna be the whole thing. And I do think that the penitentiary, there's going to be issues of the rights of the lawyers and the visitors, family visitors. So I think you do have to find out. Because I think most people in those three streets will be happy to have overnight. Even if it's not 24 hours, it's something that gives them a wide window.
Maybe that's the first step.
Although within a walking distance of water and Seaport, you do have the multimodal as well as another option. Straight over to the mountain over, you know. I mean, it's 45 degrees, it's a cliff, but it's something that we didn't have before. So I mean, it's something. So I think for me, this, when I read it, I thought it was pretty cool and it's something, and I just need to understand civics. Why just the assembly but not the senate and the senate on this?
So they will both have to sign on to it, but we started the work with Assemblywoman Levenberg, because I believe she had carried through the one for Assemblywoman Gala that Groton did a couple of years ago, including the unique area. I'm not sure of the board members, well, I think they tried to start in 2018.
Yeah.
And it took a while to.
So she has experience.
Yeah, so there's sort of a case history.
I just wanted to understand from the civics point of view why.
Oh, no, just because she's the one who said she would.
She's already done. Excellent. Any questions or comments? Any thoughts on going forward, like changing, not doing? What's
So
out there?
that think it makes sense to me. My only question actually was, would this be from a couple of times we've heard residents in the street about challenges that they have. Is this a potential solution for some of the challenges that face Hudson?
Hudson Street is not really walking distance to the train station the same way, because it's really, you got the prison there, because I don't think it would, we looked at that. I don't think it will qualify. That said, I do think that, you know, as we look at where people can park, that, you know, going forward, like, we may want to consider, like, we put some guardrails in on certain streets. It may make sense to add certain streets too. And I don't know what that, we're not there yet, but, you know, because we know there's an issue and there may not, you know, maybe where we're adding parking makes sense. That, there are a few other streets that, you know, I can think of where maybe it also offsets congestion in other areas, but that's the next phase, and that's where, you know, the Hudson Street discussion, you know, discussion, as well as other streets too, where people are really there,
Lots of neighborhoods.
but, you know,
Have lots of-
about this
But
simple.
for me, it came up because one of the examples you mentioned in the first paragraph was Sing Sing. There's a driver of traffic, and it is an entrance to Sing Sing on that side of the prison.
But we could look at it in that context. I don't have any problem looking at it. I know with Sing Sing as a driver of traffic, but I think well, we'll have to look at it.
Yeah,
Because I
I
think
think-
there's the gas points on the other side.
But I think there would be more.
I thought that's actually kind of an entrance. I didn't think that.
It
doesn't matter.
That was just.
Yeah, that's my.
Right, that's why I was
Yeah.
thinking.
It's qualified.
It's just the other side of six.
Right, and I wanna, you know, the mayor said something a couple months ago when we had talked about this last, that really stuck with me. This is a very peculiar shaped tool. This is not something that we're gonna be able to now wield in every neighborhood where we have a problem. Hudson Street, you know, I understand how that applies to the ticket application, but I just really wanna be forthcoming. with not only the board, but also the public, this is not something that would be able to deploy in every area where we have a parking problem. This so happens to be, because it's next to the train station and perhaps prison, that we would be able to make the case with their safety.
Totally understand, that's how I just.
The streets are public.
I think what it's good question. So once, everything that the clerk and the police just talked about, with the manager, will sort of play into this similarly. So what we described in the memo is sort of a first stab at what the process would look like. But basically, if the board is aligned with moving forward with this in some form or fashion, our next step will be twofold. One is to write the letter for the assemblywoman. The other is to come up with a much more detailed meat on the bone explanation of what this would actually look like, not just in terms of what the rules would be, but also how it's going to be administered. What I imagine it will look like eventually is similar to what the clerk was describing, which is you will get that permit online the same way that you do every other parking permit. And then when enforcement goes by, if your tag beeps, it means you don't have that tag. So I think that once we get over the hump of moving into the license plate readers in earnest, I think this will be able to be effectuated that way. If we must, and if we are lucky enough to move quickly enough, we can do stickers.
Is this for overnight?
We haven't decided that yet. I think as Valerie mentioned,
Because the business are around there, I mean, I park on Water Street to go, yes, you do, but yeah, that's what, there. Yeah, that's what we were just saying, we're gonna have to. Because there's not the parking for businesses in the train station lot, there's like 5 spaces. Yeah.
We are gonna have to look at parking if we do that, to accommodate the businesses, but please keep in mind, you're gonna have 40 additional spaces in 2027 in a municipal lot that's
On
going to
31
be on the corner of Central and Water. Which is easily walkable to those areas as well, and maybe allows them to park, some employee cars there to free up some spaces. Part of it, I think we will be able to use a few spaces in that area. We do have, Walters construction guys taking some spaces that can probably even convert to metered spaces, for the shops at that point, if we make those changes. We also, the residential spaces there too will better allow us to make the, muni lot that's there now, that we're being used as the train station parking lot, we can convert that back to a muni lot, because that also could be either resident only or offsetting the retail parking if we do resident only on Water Street. So we have some options to probably make parking better for not only the residents, but for the retail establishments that are sort of receiving them there as well.
So it sounds like generally positive about continuing to explore, which we will do.
Yep.
I think what we laid out is detailed recommendation coming next. Then organized community outreach to the affected neighborhoods, fine tune, and then completed proposal will be reviewed with DOT before submission to New York State.
Right,
So you
and
should see us in.
my understanding is they're each 3 individual requests, yes, or is it 1 request? I only ask this because we may decide that 1 street should be an overnight thing, the other one might be a 12-hour day, I'm making it up, but I'm just saying, like, is it 1 app, so they have to be exactly the same, or is it 3 apps, or is it like, how does that work?
I think it's up to us how we structure it. I mean,
Okay, so you'll get more information.
yeah, from the enforcement
the
perspective,
Assemblywoman thought
it's sort of an interesting question, because let's say right, if we did include Hudson Street in this, if I got a residential parking permit to park on Hudson Street, is it gonna work in the other neighborhood if I'm visiting my friend who lived over there? We probably don't want it to, right? So we'll have to think a little bit, more
But
about
you
if we
can't
could
have kids
bifurcate
to
it
park
into two
on
different.
that specific, but then take other people's.
Yeah,
spots, so I've only seen this work really well in crowded, cities in Europe, where they color code the colors for overnight. And it's been literally for a 2-block area. I mean, I only know that because I always got tickets, because I of course don't understand what the colors stand for, and then it's multiple colors, so the thing about communications is so important. About all this, so great. Go forward, yay, next.
Okay, so, the next is we're going to talk, we had, distributed a memo, that, Val and Maddie drafted, with feedback from the planning board, I don't think the ZBA, I believe it was just planning board, sorry, that the feedback from, so that's a little bit of misleading there. But Valerie can talk about the planning board, the actions we are stated as a north proposed zoning changes.
So, as part of your, when you're getting, zoning, potential zoning amendments, there needs to be a recommendation from the planning board. Recommendation is just what it is, it's a recommendation, so this board can still make its own determinations as to how you want to move forward with any, zoning amendments or put forth for the public hearing. So, we sat down with the planning board actually is in favor with overall the concepts that are being put forth from this board. They are also in favor with the overall types of housing. The one thing that they wanted the board to consider is we talked to them and they understood that technically 6 units are the maximum for we're doing for like apartment buildings, which are going to be the mixed use, right? And they actually raised the question of, well, if you're allowing for a maximum of 6 units in mixed use buildings, would the board consider just allowing a maximum of 6 units and having potentially, instead of mixed use, just all residential building up to 6 units? So what I
Not have retail.
and not necessarily retail, it could still have, that's another option, right? So one of the housing options could still be mixed use with up to 6 units, or the other one could be just a 6-unit residential building. If the board was interested in amending the zoning, I did provide you a red line version of what that would look like. You do not have to move forward with that. Ultimately, you can move forward with what you originally decided or originally have proposed and call for a public hearing on that, which would just not, would only have up to 4 families. Standalone residential. What we did for the 6 family, so that it's not necessarily, you would still need a larger lot, right? So you wouldn't necessarily be able to just build a 6 family. It's similar to what we were doing throughout that zoning. So if you have a larger lot, you could potentially put a few more units.
Where would that even be?
There's only a couple, I actually looked before I put forward, there wasn't. There's only a handful, and for the most part, you need a 6,000 square foot lot, and there's only a couple of them within that zoning district.
And where are those on Water Street there?
There is, no, there's a couple on.
I mean, it just feels like it would exacerbate the parking problem to allow even more residential stuff. Then you've got an even bigger problem. I just,
I understand.
you're gonna have a big building. And I just, now I understand it's close to the train station and stuff, that's why they're putting 109 unit apartment building there. And, I just don't know how much more bigger you're gonna be building down there. I don't wanna do anything that's gonna encourage somebody to come in and buy the old houses, tear them down, and put something up. I don't wanna, I don't think that would be an option, personally, but I personally don't wanna, I appreciate the stuff, but I take it.
So I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So what is currently on the table before we talk to the planning board was you can do an apartment building as long as the ground floor is retail and then you can have 6 units above it. What the planning board is asking me to also consider is just a 6-unit apartment building without mixed use. So very similar to what's already being proposed, just with the option of not having retail.
Which would take less parking because we would have retail.
Right. So you can still have 6 residential units and a grocery store on the bottom, or you could just have 6 residential units.
Yeah, and I just wanna, most likely, the mixed use component would probably be more located along like Water Street, right, as opposed to in the middle of like where you could actually do it. So I just wanna, so yes, it is a little bit more units, but you already have some apartment buildings down there along Water Street that already have like 4 units and 5 units. So that's where really the thought is that those types of mixed use buildings will probably
exist or above the existing commercial ability there, as opposed to being developed in Main Street or.
So it's 6 residential units. Or 6 residential units with retail underneath those 6 residential units.
And that's a maximum for mixed.
If they have enough footage.
Right, if they have enough space.
You can't do any of that.
And no, they did not recommend any changes to setback or height or other kind of.
They did not, the only thing they recommended was potentially for the board to consider allowing for up to 6 units as standalone residential. We came in with some proposal, I mean, I looked at the setbacks and the maximum building heights, and we can still potentially get 6 units. And especially if you're looking at 6.
I guess for me,
Still tight, but
it's still tight. I guess for me, the real question is, how much do we want retail down there? Because to me, if the option exists to have a 6 same fundamental of building square footage in the space with larger apartments that could potentially get larger rent. Right, because the height difference is the same, maybe you put 2 on the floor instead of 3, you get 6 or something like that. They're bigger potentially, because you could put 3 floors on them. But you wouldn't have to retail.
I think requiring retail is gonna be a deterrent to buildings. It's so hard to get somebody in retail, fire tenants. If you say, oh, you don't need retail, you know, the people go, yeah, let's build. You know, and you're making it easier to build by not having any. I would love to see more businesses down there. I think it's fun down there.
Yeah, and that's where I was going, because I think, like, from my perspective, I
I
think
mean, right now it's happening kind of organically in the spots that are there, sort of.
sort of, yeah.
And, you know, I mean, once the apartment building is full, well, yeah, another retail space,
I think there
Might be
so will be demanding for
there might be demand.
it. Right? So for me, I'm.
There's gonna be retail in that building too. Or there's gonna be space in that building.
I mean, it's not huge, but retailers don't like open when it's choppy. If they prefer to have a board or some, because certainly brings everything else in there.
Yeah.
I mean, generally speaking, it's change.
So for me, I'm a fan of the retail space. That makes it where I'm heading.
And just, so you're going with that as well. Okay.
So here from the other two.
I don't know, I'm more open to the residential option myself. That's where I am.
It's not a bad idea, but it's a little bit, it's not intellectually, but my gut says that they know it's bad at some point, it's the intuitive of like, what is it gonna look like in 10 years, not what it's gonna look like today, and we're just cutting off. Yeah, I would just say with where we were was what. But it's sort of, and honestly, there's sometimes where I just feel it's the right thing. I don't know if I have to always explain all thinking, but it feels, and I will think about Richie also. So I think, is there a rush on this?
Well, we would like to put, we'd like to have start the public hearing process on that. You could, as the board, still make amendments to the.
This is part of the moratorium.
Yes, so this area is still currently under a
And
moratorium.
the one way right longer the moratorium exists, so because we're not making a decision.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
saying it. It's a statement, I'm saying it as a question mark.
That's
We keep the lane, we keep thinking about it, every week that it's out there is another week. that we may be delaying versus going to public and then closing.
And I have heard at least from one property owner that is interested in moving forward with the new zoning, sooner than later, if that. So I do know that there are people that are paying attention to this.
So the signaling is that it was heading in the right direction for the individuals
Well, somebody.
or something.
I always say we do not make codes and laws. Based on our last conversation.
Yeah, we've already reached out to them before, and they were generally supportive of it, and then there'll be a public, they were also very interested in having that official public hearing, so.
That's a little different than that.
Exactly.
So I'll deal with it, but input, it's. Okay, so.
So you would call for the public hearing and still weigh the consideration of the
No.
plan?
You have to have a final local law for the public.
That's why I asked whether.
So if you wish to wait for trustee Ritchie, so you all know which you're all on the same page, then you can call for the public hearing. If you call for it next, to be on July 1. When we call, you have to have that public, the local has to be ready, it has to be camera ready, basically. You can't change it at that point because you basically then.
Right,
You guys hear it after. There's a public hearing, trustee Fritchie can participate and say, and vote.
But I think what you said.
What you're saying is you want to hear from him.
No, I
This
did,
discussion.
I'm just thinking of.
Whatever the board
So
We don't do this. We-
you would, okay, so maybe I misspoke, though, but my point is, based on the public hearing. If people brought up, we want conditional, we want retail
Something
conditional.
else.
Then you pull the.
Then you could-
Hearing and you have to start all over.
But isn't the whole point of to get the input from the public hearing to make?
All I'm saying is this, at the time you call for the public hearing, you have to have a local law that's ready to present at the public hearing.
Right.
The board may decide after the public hearing, we would like you to make more changes, that's fine, then it goes back again, but for the public.
It goes
hearing,
back
you have to
again,
have-
and then back to the public hearing.
Yeah,
again?
until you.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay, but that could be done quickly once we make all the changes. So if there's 3 changes, for the sake of argument, we take it back to the table, right? We rewrite it with whatever we agree on, we bring it back to a public hearing, correct?
You call for another, you call
and
for
we-
another public hearing.
Open and close it that night if we have to, if people are.
It was similar to the cannabis regulations.
Yeah.
But you would have to come back.
Yeah, okay. So, on the table right now for this meeting, we wanna wait for Bob for next. Do we wanna delay it by, not delay, do we wanna do this in 2 weeks from today? Is it 2 weeks? It's not next week, it's 2 weeks from next week, the legislative session.
But as well, if you were to call for public hearing, you would, the resolution to call would be next week with the public hearing on the first Wednesday in July. If you waited till trustee Fritchie clear back, you could either do it under continuing business next week and then call for the public hearing if you wanted to do that.
We could do that.
I mean, that's a possibility.
When is the moratorium, like, when do we have to have all this?
Moratorium ends, I'm thinking of them.
Oh, okay, okay, so we're not really in a rush, we just like to get things going. I think it's another one of those, we really make that final, that's, that's another one's the one. But at least the 4 of us, if we have opinions about it, and that'll be easy, what else? So you need an answer,
Well, no, what I've got is if we put it on continuing business next week as a discussion.
Right.
With trustee
We could do that.
here, you could then do the resolution to call for a public hearing right after that discussion.
No, we're still on track.
Yes.
okay, so anything else? You will be remote, but you'll be present.
I know that, people are traveling, we will get, to the degree that we have it, the proposed agendas for as long as we, as far out with the summer as we can. Everybody, we have it. We'll send that out, probably tomorrow, and then if we'll try to arrange things, so anything. really momentous, so I'm sure you're all here.
Are you leaving?
Yeah.
Okay, do we have exec session?
We have two more items on the agenda,
Okay.
unfortunately, but, do you wanna do 2 minutes on flag raising, just so I can put my.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah. The next item on the agenda is flag raising.
I figured that out for myself. Okay. This is really for the board, so the staff, I think it's very neutral on this, but what I'm hearing. There's am I wrong? You have a look that says I'm wrong.
I'm not really aware of the conversation.
Oh, it's, hey,
Just beyond neutral.
what is your favorite piece?
So the topic is what I believe, which is like, what should be our flag raising policy kind of moving forward? It's, from my perspective, having a legacy, system where the flags we've raised up until this point, we can continue to raise moving forward with no new flags being added. And any new proposals for flag recognitions of any kind being done electronically through the sign that we have in front of 16 Croton Avenue. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, well, what do we have in the pipeline? Because there's things.
We have at least one application on
An
pipeline.
actual application,
An
what's
actual
that
application.
application asking for?
I have to confirm the length of time, but it's asking for is it 1 week? Okay, it's the flag of your way to fly 1 week, I guess, starting at the fireman's
Early Oaks, yeah.
early August.
So
So
the first
during
thing out, so.
for what reason? The ambassador, the US ambassador your way is going to be the grand marshal of the Fireman's Bridge.
And please tell us who that is.
Louis Rinaldi,
Senior,
senior.
was appointed a couple of years ago, I think.
So it's appointed
He's
by the Trump
ambassador to
administration.
Spain.
It's a very big deal for the fire.
That's why I wanted, so.
Oh, boy.
About this, so we
Yeah.
have one application, there's talk, there's requests, there's stuff, but that's one
An
application.
annual, you know, that's specific to.
I'd like to know, how does this feel to you? Everything you said, but since it's like where we are in the year, to make the policy effective at a certain date. We can also, because I think this is a one-off, we could also say that flag can only be, first of all, we can always have a policy and then make exception.
Yeah.
Based on a certain situation. I would not have anything more than the duration of the event. If the parade is from X hour to Y hour, you can do as part of that flag. You can raise it, you salute, you can do whatever you want during the duration, and then it comes down.
Okay.
This is- That's it, I don't think we want to do that for every request, I think we could say that we could ask for this, it's on fine, we can go back and say for this. With that, the rest are being done as for your, with the legacy being done, the two legacy flags that are for a month. I don't know if I would do those for a month, each of them today, if that was the push, but it's a legacy flag. And at some point, we might say, we'll give a year's notice and say, this has to go the way everybody else is. Does that help answer the request that we just said?
I'm not 100% sure what we're doing with the year wide requests.
You're
honoring
honoring the mention of the event, they can raise the flag and that pole during the duration, so if the thing is from, I don't know, 12 to 6, so that this would be part of that in there.
Or what about for, do you want to do it for that day of the event? 'Cause I don't know when they would want to do the flag raise. So you're gonna have to assemble for them. I don't know how it would work with that. You know,
Okay, so the day of, not overnight. Day of. Put some hours out there. Because we also have staff that has to do this, and no, they can't do it themselves. Under every circumstance.
okay.
No one touches those poles. That will talk about it, even if they're like.
Okay, so for this,
Does that work for you? I'm throwing it as.
Oh, no, I love that idea. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
But we can't do it, too many flags, as I said, the village manager, are so politicized.
Sure.
And so hands-on to represent so many different things, we just cannot take this off.
Does the village currently raise the Juneteenth flag or does someone else do
The village.
The village does.
Do I understand correctly then, what you're saying is that those two flags, they're gonna stay up 1 month each time?
Their
I
legacy.
do want to point out
Yeah.
that what you're effectively saying is that you're treating them differently than other groups.
I do want to say that those were approved by the board in the past, and not for,
The board is doing it now, saying, you're now
they
essentially,
were not approved for a month.
Nope.
Those? They were-
they were never approved to go, well, they may have been approved for a month for 1 year. They've never.
Each application that they've
Came
done,
before the board?
yeah, well,
No,
I mean.
they should have. They were
It
supposed to.
probably should have, but it had come before the board, it would have been approved for.
Again, I'm pointing out that if you're going, you're in a very slippery slope if you do this now. You're gonna basically say those two, because they had it before, they can go for a month, all these others are gonna be a
Because
day.
I was under the impression that we passed those each for a month. Which is
For
different
1 year,
for that 1 year.
correct, you never came, the policy is that each time is supposed to
They
be
should
an
have been
application
coming,
and a
they should have been
discussion.
reapplying.
That's the policy,
That was an oversight.
that's the policy.
So that was an oversight. How they reapplied though, and
They weren't told that they had to reapply.
They were this year, and it came to the board this year, so they were approved this year, and then the subsequent years. Had they reapplied, the board was aware that they were doing it, they were aware that it was doing a month, so, I think for the board. It was. You know, again, the intent was to approve it for those times, that was the intent.
I do have to tell you that the flag of Portugal, when their ambassador comes here, goes up to the event and comes back. It's not unusual, and I was under the impression that the board still has the right to make decisions based on what they believe to be the right.
Or can make whatever decision, I'm looking at the policy and also going by essentially. What could come down the road if you're essentially basically veering in two different directions. Other rules.
So the concern would be, somebody would say, well, you let X, Y, Z do this for a month, why aren't we letting? it go with it?
My understanding was that we allowed it to go for a month, each time we allowed it. And now that is good, it's what.
You
we
could-
don't like to use the word grant.
But you could also change the policy going forward that Juneteenth flag raising is 1 day. And the flag raising is 1 day. It might feel disappointing to people who've had it for longer times, but it would be a way to be able to
More equitable.
accommodate things more equitably. And that's always a little bit of the challenge, with, equity, so.
Okay. So.
Wow, right when it got good.
And we have to decide this tonight, what's the rush on this one?
I think, we have an application pending that, has been submitted in advance by accordance of rule of rules, so. We have to decide relatively soon for us to be able to respond to the year one.
So my suggestion is, and this is on both, but it's all being recorded, my suggestion is, we have put a ball. That, my suggestion is, to put this flag up for that 1 day, that event. The other 2 flags we're gonna have to reconsider about either taking them down this year. Past, 219 to 219, it should be up on 219 for that day, or events going on. Pride is.
Well, they did do the pride flag and the Juneteenth flag didn't go through the policy for this. So
Okay, so-
they did the application for this month.
All right,
So
I would say for
did it not
2020.
make it to the need to be done by resolution once they do the policy?
It simply says in the policy, that you review it, you present it to the board will decide, and it will be memorialized with a copy of the determination provided to the applicant.
Okay, so we may have missed one of those steps, and apologize for that. 2026, I wouldn't change where we are right now, and it doesn't matter to me that it's 5 months, because there are over 50 month things. There are at least 10 monthly things in the summer or different heritages, or whatever, it's just not possible. But I think for the day of Juneteenth is clearly a day, like July 4th is clearly a day. Pride month is a little different, but I think 2026, we should leave the same, they can have a day for the event, like whenever they're doing it. And we will have to revisit this monthly stuff, and next year when it comes up, we're gonna have to say, like everybody else, it's a one-day event.
If we want to have.
So it's a one
day.
Basically, they have to say the date and time that they want to put up, and the board can say, okay,
Yes or
we're
no.
gonna sign it. Yes.
So what I was going for the year way is we can bring that to also during. Continuing business to have that conversation, or I guess we've done it now, so you kind of.
So let's move forward. I know that the Portuguese, they used to do flag raising, the Portuguese flag here, but now that they're doing it at St. Anne's, I don't know whether they.
I don't think they did it last year.
I don't think they did it last year, so we're not gonna ask, I'm just saying. Others will. So we'll have the day, so we'll clear like.
So Juneteenth will be for the day.
Yeah, same thing with Pride, I'll have to come with
Come up
the
with a day.
day. And this flag will be for a day, I'm just not sure it's gonna happen in 2026, I don't think we need to take things down. I know
No, I
after
think
this
this
year,
would be.
there will be
On
for the next attestation.
Since this is the first time we're discussing.
There you go. Can't call it retroactive. But it's thinking it's the same. And then I believe that what you're saying is that after this, we're gonna do it on the, like, the LED screen after such a that, so. we can discuss that.
We can do that as well.
Well, then you change your policy, since
Yeah,
that's flag raising policy.
That's not flag raising,
Well, well, then you don't.
that's a communication.
Yeah.
You just apply and they say, hey, and they think that they know. That's communication.
You know, what, again, with that, whatever we do, I think always the issue is just doing it consistently, so, it may be,
It used to be a much easier discussion with politicization of so much flags and all this stuff. It's just for right now, things don't change. Sure. Or is everybody okay with this or? I mean, I'm not crazy about it, but I don't see a better way right now, so. That's so they have one application, let's see what else is that. You know, and as we get things, we'll have to answer them. Sure, there'll be more.
Yes, we have the rebate sports bar. They are, their cabaret license expires on June 30th. That was the decision of the board previously. There are no complaints from the police. The one thing they didn't do was that the license had provided that they should communicate with Captain Donahue to discuss the operational issues. According to Captain Donahue, he has not spoken with anyone there. But according to Lieutenant McGovern, there have been no calls or any problems with regard to the facility.
That's
So
the goal.
So what they're looking to do is essentially get a resolution so that we can extend their cabaret license through the end of the year, so that they would be then just on a regular calendar.
Well, that was our goal.
Yes, sir.
People have to do best. Yes.
So it's good that they did better, it's good that they, meet the other criteria, like the training and.
They have, yeah, they keep, actually, they're very good. Whenever they have a new person who has training, I get their ID. They recently changed their method of operation to include a jukebox. They sent it to me immediately with a copy of their new liquor license, so they are like.
Okay, good.
Good, very, very confident.
That was the one, that was the only other.
They're very good
question I
at
had.
that.
May I ask what?
That was not.
It's a fair purpose.
But I didn't, I said to them, I don't think we're gonna be really talking about what the issue is. So,
they have the impression. So.
I think they wanted to
It's
see
in my-
much on them.
but yeah, I said it really is gonna be an opportunity.
Okay.
If I might, there was one more item that I was supposed to add to the agenda and didn't, it's 10 seconds. We were also supposed to go over with you, Valerie and I, you have referred the decision to extend the T-zone moratorium to the planning board for their input. They said, sounds good. So I just want to have it on the record. They did look at it, their responses, full steam ahead.
Oh.
There was the motion.
I think they may have already been, either we're following the public hearing or we may have done that. It's-
I have. Yeah, so the public hearing, I believe, is next week.
Yes, yes, we
Yeah.
already know.
So we just needed to make sure that we closed that loop and mercifully there's nothing.
Cool. No, that's why I asked for you.
Motion to adjourn.
So the heat was on.
It's, okay.